More than a century ago, the world was engulfed in a biological catastrophe. The dead rose, mutated, and began to mercilessly hunt the survivors. Those who survived suddenly awakened powers, mutant abilities that give them a chance to fight and protect the remnants of humanity. In 2145, the survivors united with the forces into a new type of army to build a line of defense and protect the remnants of civilization. One of these third-level squads fought a terrible monster. It was red, with 4 eyes located right on its hands. The fighters knew that almost the entire first and second classes had been destroyed. If the pace of the fighting did not change, there would soon be nothing left of the third. The monster did not attack, but stood wary. The squad realized that they could not wait. A decisive attack would give them at least some chance of survival. With his large red tentacles, he rushed towards the fighters. Instantly, the trio found themselves in the air, tightly clamped in the tentacles, approaching the terrible mouth, emitting steam and blood. The tentacles paralyzed the fighters, blocking their abilities. Fear grew inside them. They were losing hope of getting out alive. Suddenly, the sky burst into flames. A blinding beam of light struck the ground. The monster roared in pain, rage, and unknown horror. Red chunks of flesh began to tear off the monster's body. Someone incredibly strong was literally shredding it with each swing. The freed fighters fell to the ground, wounded but alive. No one could believe in salvation. Everything happened too quickly. Shock gripped everyone. Who was it? Who could handle such a monster? None of the fighters knew how to describe what they saw. In front of them stood a tall, black-haired youth. His strength was palpable. It was none other than Mr. Yening himself. The squad breathed a sigh of relief. Gratitude and respect shone in everyone's eyes. They understood. Only he could save them at that moment. A minute later, a new mutant emerged from the shadows. The god-level archer drew his bowstring. The threat was serious, and he was ready. The monster was terrifying. Horns, tentacles, glowing eyes. But the fighters did not flinch. Fear gave way to determination. No one wanted to retreat. The hammerman stepped forward, gripping the handle. He knew he had to close the distance while he still had a chance to strike the enemy. He and the archer jumped into the air. Their attack was coordinated. The hammer swung from above, and the arrow was already flying towards the target. The eye in the monster's belly flared, and the bright light blinded the fighters, causing them to stray off course and lose their balance in the sky. Both warriors felt a searing pain. Blood came out of their mouths. Their minds became clouded. Their bodies began to crumble right in the air. A second later, only a hammer and a bow remained from the fighters. It was a destructive technique of a purple mutant of an unknown class. Support, seeing the death of her comrades, clenched her fists with the remaining strength. She was not afraid. Her heart burned with a thirst for revenge. At that moment, the mutant appeared behind her. It all happened in a split second. She didn't even have time to react. She couldn't turn around. Her body froze. All she could feel was the monster's breath right above her ear. But at that moment, Yening appeared in front of her. His sword intercepted the attack, protecting her from certain death. He was faster than fear. The master realized this was not the third level. Such a monster had destroyed 2 awakened ones. There was clearly something much more dangerous here. He gave the order to retreat. The girl understood that to stay meant to die. She obeyed without arguing, leaving the battlefield. Yening strengthened his sword and slashed at the mutant. He flew back but was held on by his tentacles. The master's strength was still impressive. The monster blocked the blow, and the blade cracked. One block, and the sword shattered. The monster showed that it was much more dangerous than it seemed. Now Yening realized that no matter how many moves he planned ahead, there was nothing better than practice. It became clear. The enemy is a 4th-level mutant. Their power goes beyond human understanding and destroys everything around them. To survive, you have to act at your limit. Yening braced himself and went on the offensive, not leaving the monster a second. They soared into the air. Blows rained down from all sides. It was not a battle, but a storm. Each blow could be the last. The mutant broke free and released a red beam. Yanning barely stood. His body trembled, but he held on, continuing the fight. Steam was escaping from the body. The monster's strength was astonishing. Even Yanning, with his divine gift, could not hide his amazement. The monster rushed forward. Its hand pierced Yanning's chest. The heart was torn out. It all happened in one terrible moment. The sword fell from his hand. The body of the master fell to the ground. All hopes, faith, disappeared in the dust, as did his life. Lying down, he thought, no one understands the true power of the fourth level. Even he has not managed to unravel its secret. I never protected this world, flashed through my mind. The monster bent down, tentacles reaching for the lifeless body. In an instant it was all over. Yanning died like that. The hero whose strength seemed like hope fell to the hands of a monster. Everyone on board the ship was shocked. Could it be that China's only hope, a god-level talent, Yanning, had been defeated? The mutants intensified their attacks. The city was collapsing. People were dying. The remains of civilization were disappearing in chaos, full of horror and pain. If only they had found him earlier, the survivors thought. If only he had had time to train. Everything could have been different. The bearded man hit the panel. Pain, rage, and fear filled him. They were losing. And they were dying one by one. They lost all the lines of defense that were involved. But the third levels managed to deliver the maximum power of nuclear warheads. Pulling himself together, the bearded man decided to somehow influence the situation. After all, death is inevitable, but this concerns them. He gave the order to the third levels to drop the warheads. The hatch opened and a whole squad jumped out of the ship. And with the words, "Humanity will live," they detonated the warheads along with themselves. There were many explosions. Many houses were blown up. Many people who remained in this place died. The planet was shaking from explosions. But all this was for the purpose of destroying mutants, saving what was left of humanity. Yanning opened his eyes to the roar of monster news. He found himself in a cage, and his memory contained only fragments of recent events. His head was throbbing with pain. Had he really not lost? All around him were metal bars, dim light, and a sense of uneasy uncertainty. 2 guards noticed that he had woken up. They discussed how he couldn't have passed the test because he was unconscious, which meant he was a loser. One of the guards suggested eliminating Yanning. In his opinion, the guy was of no value and did not deserve a second chance. They believed that he was not a descendant of the awakened one. No one would look for him, which meant that he could be gotten rid of without consequences. Suddenly, Yanning realized he had gone back 3 years to the day he failed the test. Then, someone had interfered, and he had failed the test. The guards pointed their guns at him, ready to shoot. But he's not the same now, and he won't let the past repeat itself. One guard noticed that Yanning was about to intercept the weapon and ordered his partner to shoot him without delay. But Yanning was faster, grabbing the weapon and snatching the gun from the guard's hands with lightning-fast determination. With his other hand, he hit the guard hard in the ribs. The second guard stood there, stunned by what was happening, not knowing how to react. After dealing with the first one, Yanning pointed the gun at the second guard and fired without hesitation, eliminating the threat. Both guards were dead, their bodies lying lifeless on the cold floor, and the air was filled with silence from the fight. 3 years ago, Yanning failed the test and survived on the streets until the military discovered his divine talent. At that time, China was on the verge of collapse, and no one believed that the country could rise from the ashes of destruction. He had been raised to level 3 in just 7 months, but he was far from the strongest. However, he fought a level 4 mutant. He walked down the hallway thinking about how he couldn't save his mother and sister. Now he was here, and everything would be different. As long as Yanning passes the test and becomes stronger, he has a chance to save the people he loves from the impending apocalypse. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of him, informing him that he was now bound to Yanning and contained a quest. The task was to ask the binder to touch the crystal to activate the function within 31 minutes. This system was different from the one in his previous life, perhaps because of his unique talent. Now he must pass the test as quickly as possible and find the culprit of all his troubles. The countdown has already begun. At this time, a squad of warriors ran into the room shouting, "Raise your hands!" They sounded the alarm, declaring that the infected had escaped. The squad surrounded Yanning and ordered him to stand still. He assessed the captain and the others, who was awakened and who was an ordinary person. Yanning decided that the best solution would be to take the captain hostage and demand that he be taken to the testing site. In a split second, he snatched the pistol from the common soldier, acting with precision and determination. He then fired at the captain's pistol, knocking it out of his hands and demonstrating his determination. Without wasting any time, Yanning deftly moved behind the captain, taking control of the situation. Putting a pistol to the commander's temple, he ordered the others not to move. Otherwise, he would kill him. The entire squad shouted at Yanning to let the captain go, as it was punishable by death, but he insisted on his own. Everyone was shocked by what this imposter was doing, violating the established order. The commander began to get indignant, claiming that this was a misunderstanding and suggested that they just talk. But Yanning pressed the pistol harder on his temple and ordered him to go. The captain agreed, saying that he would die because he was not awakened. A large crowd of spectators gathered to watch the test, expecting a spectacular event. On a huge platform in the security zone, military representatives sat. A voice announced the fateful day. Today the losers will be doomed to wander, and the winners will become the saviors of humanity. Liao Tian was the first to respond, suggesting that they begin the test, emphasizing the importance of the moment. Young men began to emerge from the ship, ready for the tough fight that lay ahead today. A message came over the radio. The infected took a hostage and entered the testing ground. All the representatives jumped up, not understanding how this could happen, and began to act. Strange sounds were heard in the passage leading to the training ground, causing alarm among those present. The soldiers standing at the exit were thrown back onto the training ground, as if someone had thrown them with incredible force. Yanning followed behind, holding a gun to the captain's temple. A shocked Liao Tian ordered him to lower his weapon and not resist. Otherwise, they would be forced to kill him. Some of the soldiers had already drawn their swords, preparing for action. The other part, the riflemen, already held their machine guns aimed at Yanning, waiting for the order. Suddenly, the guy declared that he was not infected, trying to explain the situation. The shooters were ready to fire, believing him to be infected, but were still waiting for the order. Yanning continued to hold the gun to the captain's temple and stated that he did not want to disturb the awakening ceremony. He was here to take the test. Liao Tian seethed with rage, his face contorted, his voice rose into a scream as he ordered the soldiers to seize the insolent intruder immediately. The soldiers reacted immediately. The sound of footsteps echoed across the square, and the entire squad rushed towards Yanning, their eyes filled with cold determination. The guy silently threw the gun away. At that moment, the stern voice of the system was heard from above. The awakened act, according to special rules of participation. The voice continued, "Violation of army orders is a death penalty, unless the violator can be useful to the structure." Seeing that the boy was disarmed, the captain suddenly rushed forward and hit him in the face, furiously, with such force as if he wanted to drive him into the ground. Yanning collapsed onto the concrete. The soldiers stood silently around him, no one moving but everyone watching with anxious attention. The captain leaned on the boy, sitting on his stomach. The soldiers immediately rushed to help. Everyone tried to keep the young man pinned to the ground. The command representative screamed hysterically, pointing at the lying youth. "Execute him! He is dangerous! Don't give him a chance!" One of the soldiers, with a stony face, raised a blade above Yanning. The blade hovered above his face, ready to fall at any moment. Suddenly, a roar was heard over the training ground. One of the helicopters dived down, illuminating everything with a bright, cutting light from a searchlight. It was a helicopter of the awakened. The soldiers looked at each other. No one had warned them about the participation of higher powers. What are they doing here? A man jumped out of the helicopter, a third level awakened. It was the legendary Commander Xiao Hai, the leader of the combat elite. His landing sent a wave of dust flying everywhere, as if the very earth shook from the presence of such a powerful fighter. The soldiers retreated, shocked by his aura. But in everyone's minds there was one question. Why was he here if the test hadn't even begun? Xiao Hai explained, "The county is looking for awakened people. Since the young man is eager to participate, they decided to test him to see if he is the one they need." The captain didn't argue. He looked gloomily at his men and said, "If he fails the test, do whatever you want with him. Don't touch him for now." The order was immediately given. Prepare everything necessary. The soldiers began to bustle about collecting equipment and clearing the area. The captain slowly stood up. Yaning stood up after him, breathing heavily, shaking off the dust and remnants of shame from his clothes without saying a word. One of the fighters aiming to participate sneered, "Ordinary people can only dream of the power of the awakened. It is not for you." Another added mockingly that beggars were in vain hoping to be useful. Yaning did not answer. He confidently walked towards the gray pillar in the center of the training ground. In the past, he was not allowed to pass the test. He made many mistakes, allowed circumstances to break him. Now everything is different. He reached out his hand to the crystal. This time he decided not to retreat, not a single step back. Fate would be under his control, not someone else's whim. As soon as the fingers touched the stone, light began to flow from it. At first it was weak, but with each passing moment it became brighter. The glow expanded, filling the polygon. Its pulsation seemed to fill the air, causing everyone around to freeze in anticipation. People looked at each other. Someone nervously clutched their guns. No one expected that the guy who had recently been almost executed was capable of such a thing. Yaning closed his eyes, concentrating. He felt the energy flowing into him, deep and familiar, like a long-forgotten part of him. A message appeared on the hologram, level D, then C. People started whispering around. This was already a surprise. Next came B. Liao Tian stared at the screen in disbelief. How could this kid's level rise like that? What kind of person was he? Purple rays burst out from the boy's hand. The screen showed A. The level, accessible only to a few, was considered outstanding. Energy filled his body. He felt himself becoming stronger, and the longer he touched the crystal, the more it flowed into him. A column of light rose above the training ground, bright, purple, powerful. It pierced the sky, causing the clouds to part. Liao Tian couldn't believe what was happening. How could a mere youth have an A-level talent? It was a 1-in-a-million chance, no other way. Xiao Hai, without taking his eyes off the crystal, said with a stony expression, "The result has not yet been announced. What if it is higher?" Everything around was flooded with a purple glow. People held their breath. Fear in the eyes of some, trepidation in others. What level will the crystal show? Yaning didn't pull his hand away. He kept his palm pressed against the crystal, feeling the inside of him filling with a glowing power. Suddenly new streams of light burst out of the crystal. They spread across the polygon, spreading as if across a living surface. Everyone watched with their mouths open. Some even took a step back, not understanding what was really happening before their eyes. The boy's eyes began to glow the same shade as the crystal. He had absorbed so much energy that he seemed to be a being of light. A stream of power shot up, piercing the clouds. Even the sky seemed to tremble under the pressure of this power emanating from his body. People covered their faces from the rising wind. The boy, by waking up, had caused a storm, as if nature itself had responded to the call. Even Xiao Hai himself lost his composure. The data was constantly updating. The guy turned out to be a level 5 talent. "Armored vehicles are patrolling the borders to protect the city from mutants," Xiao said briefly, turning to Liao Tian. "Fighters are in the air, monitoring the situation. We will not allow any accidents," he added. Everything was under control, but the tension was growing. "All roads are blocked. Access is closed. Even the sky above us is blocked. Xiao finished his report, not taking his eyes off the young man. Yanning didn't stop. He began to absorb even more energy, and the air began to hum. Even the fighters began to sway noticeably. Suddenly, the purple flash disappeared. The light dissipated, and soon Yanning's figure could be seen standing in the middle of the empty circle. Silence reigned on the testing ground. The system's voice echoed over everyone. Initiation complete. Test officially passed. The crowd that had been watching the awakening froze. Now all eyes were on Yanning. No one could see the other candidates anymore. Even the guards who had recently restrained him stood in stupor, their gazes reflecting uncertainty and something resembling respect. The last rays of purple power disappeared. The stone faded, returning to its usual gray color, as if nothing had happened. The tablet fell out of Xiao's hands. He didn't say a word, just stood there as if he'd been hit on the head. It was a real shock. The captain froze, not moving. And in that pause, the main thing was announced. Yanning's name was announced as the owner of the SS level. At this moment, Xiao Hai realized S is the third-class level. This means that Yanning is above them all. Could there really be a chance for salvation? He looked up to the sky and cried out with tears in his voice, "There are still people like this being born in Tianfeng. We are not lost." The boys who had been making fun of him were now silent. Their faces were distorted with envy. After all, not everyone gets praised by the commander personally. Yanning looked down at his hand. There was a glimmer of knowledge inside him. He was SSS level, but the crystal itself could only detect SS. A translucent system window popped up right before Yanning's eyes, flashing with golden lines and indicating that the current mission had been successfully completed. As a reward, the system enhanced his abilities. In his past life, he barely managed to level up 2 skills to the legendary S level. Now Yanning had a completely new goal, to completely master the art of swordsmanship and complete the mission associated with it. While Yanning was deep in thought about his abilities, Captain Xiao approached him and solemnly congratulated him on obtaining an SS rank skill. With a sweeping gesture, the captain asked what reward the boy wanted to receive, assuring him that Uncle Xiao would definitely fulfill any of his wishes. But the young man was still absorbed in the system and didn't even notice that someone was talking to him. Liao Tian called out to him again, but to no avail. The captain came to a logical conclusion. Yanning must have just awakened a new skill and had not yet had time to get used to its effects. Smiling, Xiao patted him firmly on the shoulder and noted with nostalgia that he himself had once been in the same shock as the young man was now. Without waiting for a reaction, the captain gently pushed the guy and led him to his office to discuss everything in a calmer atmosphere. While they were drinking strong, aromatic tea, Xiao explained that Yanning had been slandered, and he had already sent people to deal with the culprits. After passing the test, Yanning will be assigned a mentor. Xiao also asked to talk about the talent so that he could make a suitable plan. Yanning couldn't reveal the truth about the system, so he simply said that his talent was telekinesis, the ability to control things with his mind. Thinking out loud, the captain admitted that such a rare talent was not often encountered, and again asked what reward the boy still wanted to receive. Yanning didn't hesitate. He asked for a book of sword-fighting skills, and Captain Xiao immediately ordered the best copy to be brought to him. One of the junior fighters quickly returned with a tablet. It was the highest-level skill book in stock. Yanning accepted the device with gratitude, carefully picked it up, and after thanking it, said that he would now like to return home. Xiao nodded and promised that he would assign soldiers to guard the young man around the clock. Safety was now a matter of utmost importance. Having released some of his energy, the captain gave a strict order. Within 24 hours, prepare a report on why Yanning almost lost his right to take the test. Regardless of the rank and status of the culprits, the order was clear: arrest them immediately. The soldiers bowed, acknowledging the captain's authority. Yanning was taken home in a massive armored attack-resistant vehicle. It looked like a special escort. Getting out of the car, the guy calmly told the soldiers that they could stay there. He would walk home himself, without bothering them any further. The street was crowded. Passers-by pointed at him, whispered and discussed rumors about the new awakened one, as if they had seen a miracle. Suddenly, in the middle of the street, his gaze fell on a skinny girl who was dragging behind her a huge bag that was clearly beyond her strength. He immediately recognized her and called out her name, his voice trembling. "Xiaoan!" The girl turned around sharply, surprise never leaving her face when she saw her own older brother in front of her. Seeing his younger sister, Ye Ning's heart sank as he remembered how he had failed to protect her in his previous life, and he asked her for forgiveness in his mind. Unable to contain himself, he walked up to her and hugged her tightly, promising in his heart that this time he would do everything so that she would not suffer for anything. Xiaoan clung to him and whispered with tears in her eyes that they hadn't seen each other for over a year. She thought he was still in the camp. The young man's eyes became moist, and he said with emotion that he had already passed the test and returned. Xiaoan asked him in surprise why he was crying then, to which he replied that he was simply very happy to see her again, for real. Grabbing his hand, the girl pulled him forward and happily said that they needed to go home quickly. Her mother had been worried since the very day he left. The little sister pulled out a bag full of parts that she had been collecting for a long time. She offered to exchange them for cake so that she could eat her fill today. Ye Ning assured that today everyone would eat to their fill because it was a special day. Xiaoan happily asked about meat, and he nodded. There would be that too. At home, he turned around in the kitchen, and soon something delicious smelled. The guy cooked a lot of food, as if he knew how to surprise his family. Mom asked at the table if she had made any progress in passing an important test. Everyone around her was interested, but she didn't know what to answer. He calmly announced that he had already passed the test and had become awakened. His voice was confident, without a trace of doubt or pride. Tears glistened in the mother's eyes. Her heart trembled with happiness. She couldn't believe her ears. Xiaoan jumped up from the bench, her face beaming with pride for her brother. She loudly declared that she now proudly called him her elder. During dinner, his sister asked if they could eat like this forever. When he nodded, she laughed happily, imagining the new routine. After a delicious dinner, Xiaoan climbed into bed with her mother, just like when she was a child. They felt cozy together, as if the day had ended with something especially warm. Ye Ning walked up to their door, quietly opening it to take one last look. He simply stood there, watching them breathe peacefully in their sleep, serenely. He closed the door behind him and immediately gave the order to the system in his mind. Then the command popped up. Open the skill book for analysis. Windows appeared before my eyes, one with a reward for the mission. Another reported that a rare sea-level skill had been discovered. Another window notified about the improvement of the sword technique skill to SSS rank Swordstorm. With a surge of power, a small sword projection appeared in Ye Ning's chicken. The next window popped up the characteristics of this skill. The boy was a little shocked that he had improved this skill from C to SSS level. Even in his past life, he had never seen anything so unreal. To use it, you needed 4,500 points of spiritual energy. But Ye Ning was only at the initial level, and his spiritual energy reserve was 1,500 points. But only from the third level were 4,000 points available, and the will level was 40 points. If you don't take into account equipment bonuses, then to use Swordstorm, one needs to reach only the middle of the third level, but he can use it every 48 hours. The problem is that the guy can't tell about himself in a way that the system prohibits. He still has to tell the commander about the sewing plan, so it's better not to use Storm of Swords until he reaches level 2. Leaning his hand on the table, he thought about how he had never seen this sword technique in his past life. Having projected a small image of this technique in his hand, he wanted to use it right now. Then Ye Ning wondered, wasn't it in the military circle? During the apocalypse, the world was filled with spiritual energy. Monsters have appeared everywhere, with the number of awakened increasing, expeditions ending, and trials. Information about dungeons gradually fell into the hands of humanity. The military in particular spent a lot of resources on research and development of test dungeons to prepare their own troops. The natural copy can be stopped at any moment in case of mortal danger. Safety is taken to the extreme. Putting on a light cloak, Yanning decided that he could go to the test dungeon and try out the skill. The guy had already entered the building where they were creating training dungeons in the Tianfeng safe zone. He came there with a request to create a low-level dungeon with absolutely any kind. The guy who was in the dungeon recognized Yanning and remembered that the commander had given access to this guy. The dungeon creator asked if it would be better to go with someone else. With Yanning's strength, it is dangerous to go alone. The guy said he was going there to do a little research and would come out right away, and then he pressed the red button in his hand. Little by little, Yanning dissolves into space and eventually moves to the place he needs, and the guy who was in the dungeon just watches what is happening. Yanning found himself in a stone corridor with large round arches. This was the entrance to the dungeon. The system immediately notified about the location and danger level of the guy. The dungeons were created shortly after the apocalypse. Yanning thought the weapon provided by the system was a dagger. He slowly plunged his hand into the interface window as if it were liquid glass. It sparkled like lightning, scattering with every movement. Soon the weapon was in his hand, light and comfortable. The weak blade was ideal for testing his own strength. A toothy red mutant was watching the guy from around the corner. The guy noticed him but continued to watch in response. And then this monster rushed to attack. His big nasty eye became visible. Jumping into the air, Yanning got ahead of the mutant and delivered a knee strike to the head first. And then he punched him in the bulging eye without giving him time to come to his senses. The monster fell with a squeal, unable to withstand the second blow. Having finished with this monster, the guy continued his journey through the dungeon without losing his pace. Ahead of him, massive doors towered with the dim sign, Exit. It beckoned like the last line of defense against a new threat. Without losing an ounce of determination, the boy pushed the doors sharply, and they swung open with a creak. Right behind them stood a mutant of the same color as the previous one. Only now this one had 4 eyes and more teeth. The monster opened its jaws and lunged forward, clearly intending to bite off Yanning's head entirely. But the boy didn't flinch. Quickly getting his bearings, he drove the dagger under the monster's jaw with such force that the beast flew into the air. With a loud crash, the mutant fell to the floor and slid along it for several more meters, raising a cloud of dust. Yanning breathed heavily, knowing that even though his body was not in perfect shape, his past life experience told him how to deal with zombies. To really test his strength, he needed a worthy opponent, which meant it was time to get out of here through the stairwell. Behind the building, after the shopping street, the boss area was waiting for him. That was where his goal was leading. Climbing up the dusty stairs, the guy opened the doors leading to the next floor of the dungeon. There, a crowd of zombies was already waiting for him. All of them belonged to the middle stage of the first level. After assessing the situation, Yanning decided that there was no point in wasting much time on them. Sensing his presence, the zombies turned around in unison, their skin hanging in tatters from their bones, and empty black holes gaping in their eye sockets. They froze, their mouths opening in the shape of triangular stars at once. Their ugly appearance could frighten anyone. But Yanning's task was clear: find the boss and get out of here as quickly as possible. Cutting through the air with blows and neutralizing those who dared to approach, the guy moved forward. Those zombies that had not noticed him before now took off and rushed after him. Their hunger pushed them forward. Not much time had passed, and behind Yanning's back, entire hordes of mutants were already rushing. Despite the fact that he was crushing them by the dozens, his level did not grow. This was starting to irritate him. Having jumped onto an abandoned rusty car, the guy realized that he would have to break through to the boss's zone, getting rid of this horde. Jumping onto a small concrete platform, he immediately heard several system messages. He had arrived in the boss area. All the monsters he had fought just a moment ago had vanished into thin air. The next notification read, "A level 1 mutant, a corpse eater, is approaching. As soon as the monster stepped onto the platform, it swung its tentacles, trying to catch the guy off guard. But Yening didn't hesitate. He jumped up and deftly avoided the blow. Under normal conditions, it would take at least 3 awakened ones to deal with such a mutant, and new zombies were already looming on the horizon. Weighing the odds, the boy realized that if this were a real battle, he wouldn't have a single chance, even taking into account his heavenly skills. The boss's reinforcements didn't take long to arrive. Now they were rushing at Yening from all sides. He continued to dodge, not allowing the giant to catch him off guard. Even a Tier 1 elite squad would be in trouble in this situation. Gathering strength around himself, the guy rose closer to the mutant. He was preparing to use a new skill. Leaping high into the air, Yening concentrated his energy into his right hand, ready to attack. As sad as it may be, there is no other way out. I have to leave the dungeon. The system reported that the skill is ready for use. Unleashing his power, he released a straight line of blue light that slammed into the mutant with deafening force. The flow of energy continued to destroy everything around, scattering zombies into dust. After finishing his attack, Yening stood there in slight shock. It was complete destruction in one blow. If it weren't for the test, he wouldn't have even imagined how powerful this skill was. Looking at his hands, he realized that he could now instantly crush even weak second-level mutants. The system immediately sent a notification about the accrual of 5 points of physical experience. To top it off, he was rewarded with a new piece of equipment, the Fast Hands gloves. In his past life, he had never even heard that you could get something like that in the dungeons. Putting on the gloves, he immediately saw a significant increase in physical characteristics through the window. The goal was achieved. Now he decided to leave the dungeon. Teleporting back, Yening returned the button token to the same guy he had taken it from. The dungeon worker glanced at him and thought that the guy was probably scared of the large number of zombies since he returned so quickly. But then a cry rang out. Who let the first-level squad into the dungeon? A mustachioed man approached him and began to complain that it was impossible to launch several people at the same time. The dungeon was designed for one. After all, maintaining such dungeons is an extremely complex and costly task. However, the guy with the token calmly stated that he had not sent an entire squad into the dungeon. Usagi didn't understand. If he didn't let any squad into the dungeon, then the first-level mutant fell? This is impossible even for an experienced team. The dungeon overseer frowned, quickly opened the camera records on the computers, and it turned out that the monster dropped a unique item. The brunette man, who was watching the recordings with his eyes wide open, said, "The only one who had entered this dungeon recently was Yening. He said that the guy wanted to test something. Maybe he was trying to see if he could defeat the dungeon boss alone." Yening himself was walking along an abandoned alley where bullets were exchanged for flour. The dim ruins were witnesses to a lost civilization. Although he could now destroy a level 1 mutant with one blow, it was too early to relax. The real threats were still ahead. On the same alley, he noticed how local punks were fleecing a drunk, taking the last of his food and change from his pockets. Seeing the patrolmen in the distance, the little ones scattered in all directions, leaving their prey lying on the sidewalk. But Yening didn't care about their petty squabbles. The thought of the impending disaster plunged him into anxiety again. He knew for sure that all this would collapse in a year. Images appeared in his memory, the destroyed Tianfeng zone, littered with corpses due to the invasion of third-level mutants. And just 10 days later, a zombie outbreak begins in the former Tianfeng city district, causing even more problems. While Xiaoan and his mother were still safe, he needed to gain strength as quickly as possible. At the same time, something important was being discussed at the Central Military Headquarters, the discovery of an awakened SS level in Tianfeng. The awakened one was pure-blooded, which opened up opportunities for the people gathered at the meeting. One after another, they spoke out about the need to improve Yening's training and begin training him under the command of an experienced officer. One of the mustachioed men suggested that the goal of all those gathered was to make a breakthrough from the 3rd to the 4th level, overcoming the insurmountable gap. Another bearded man noted that all the commanders were only at level 3, and no one could reach level 4, since no one was that high to begin with. Then the first bearded man said that it was not a bad idea to train Ye Ning from the beginning. He should be given a chance. One of those who sat at the head of the table gave an urgent order to bring the boy to the capital's military zone as a test subject for the implementation of the sewing. But the bespectacled man from the 4th Military District crossed his hands over his mouth and resolutely objected. Everyone looked at him in surprise, waiting for an explanation. The man who gave the order frowned. Was he really starting to argue for the sake of arguing again? Adjusting his glasses, the man asked a counter-question. Hadn't everyone here read the last part of the urgent announcement? Ye Ning is an awakened being with the attribute of mental will. In 70 years of research, not a single mental of this level has appeared, he continued. People with this attribute are incredibly weak physically and usually fight from the rear. And going into battle alone, without the support of other awakened ones, is not a good idea. The man from the 4th Military District continued to explain. The transition from the 1st to the 2nd level is already quite a difficult task, and the probability of a successful transition from 2nd to 3rd is 0. Everyone knows this. One of the leaders in the room agreed. There was no point in spending so many resources on Ye Ning. The risk of ending up with nothing was too high. The next day, Commander Xiao watched the news that Ye Ning had been excluded from the seeding project and even lowered in priority. The captain's assistant asked if they should keep the benefits they had originally planned for the boy. Throwing the tablet on the table, Xiao said since the management from above confirmed that he had no potential, they should cancel everything. The assistant also asked about the investigation into Ye Ning's obstruction of the test, since the suspect committed murder. Should it be completed? The captain replied that they were going to investigate because they were counting on his strength. But if there is no potential, then what is the point of investigating? The soldiers who were assigned to the boy informed him of the decision from above and that all his privileges were being taken away from him. When they left, Ye Ning wondered why they decided that his maximum was only level 2. The check was for SS, but he turned out to be SSS level. Now he understood why people with such an attribute were considered weak. They simply did not reveal their full potential. Life was again throwing surprises. Unexpectedly, but this life is full of surprises. Should he personally reveal his SSS level and the meaning of mental awakening? Throwing that thought aside, the boy decided that he should concentrate on quickly finding a way to reach the 3rd level. Being armed with the Sword God system and the Sword Storm skill, his starting point is much higher than it was in his previous life. Now he was in a dark forest when soldiers approached him with an offer to join a squad to destroy first-stage mutants. First-level mutants already give few points, and you still want to divide them among so many people? He calmly refused. These words hurt them a little. Don't get too cocky just because you've become awakened, one of them said. The 3 of them surrounded Ye Ning, their words becoming increasingly harsh, provoking a fight. The boy, no longer able to bear it, chased the upstart out of his way. Frightened by the gaze, the knight had to step aside. Continuing to walk deep into the wild forest and thinking about their own, the knights continued to look after him. If he remembers everything correctly, then deeper in the forest there are 2 mutants, one of which is at the last step of its level. To reach the 1st level, the awakened one needs to kill 3 mutants of the 1st level. He killed one in the test dungeon, but he gave few points for it. If he kills 2 mutants in the forest of rotting corpses, the level will still go up. Noticing some movement behind him, Ye Ning prepared to defend himself in the hopes that he could avoid the use of Sword Storm. Since he needed to increase his physical experience, and having hit the monster's head with all his might with a rifle, he simply smashed it. Suddenly, monsters of different kinds jumped out from the depths of the forest, rotten, ugly, with gaping mouths. The guy has a new goal: to dispel the stereotype that awakened ones with the attribute of mental will are the weakest in terms of physical fitness. After all, the rest of the awakened ones also need to think about mental awakening. Otherwise, when mutants of higher levels appear, it will be too late. He has to make them realize how important it is. The soldiers who were standing near the entrance to the forest heard the shots and determined from the sound that it was coming from where the tree demon should be. It sounded too close. Now the knights decided to hurry. They did not want to let the boy kill the demon before them and take the reward. Yaning tried to dodge the demon's attacks in various ways. The system notified that 2 demons had joined the battle at once, but only one was visible on the horizon. The monster was green, allowing it to blend almost completely with the forest foliage, making it look like it was part of its surroundings. Yaning sensed danger. Something was wrong. At that very moment, the monster rushed to attack, giving almost no time to react. Long tentacles shot out from the undergrowth, looming over him menacingly. They moved sharply and quickly, as if they wanted to grab him right away. He easily managed to dodge all the attacks. Each of his movements was precise, as if he knew in advance where the blow would come from. Suddenly, the monster disappeared, leaving behind only a cloud of dust. It seemed to dissolve into thin air. Yaning became wary and looked around, but before he could get his bearings, he noticed a monster suddenly appear above his head. Having hit with all his might, some pieces of earth flew to the sides, but the honed skills helped the boy dodge the attacks. Due to the high speed, he had to brake even with his hands. Yaning continued moving while trying to understand the enemy's tactics. He quickly realized that the mutant could jump. This gave him an idea. Attack from behind, before the second monster showed up. Already enraged, the green carcass swung its tentacles even harder, trying to hit the guy. At this moment, Yaning had no time to think or dodge. He had to act right now. The monster did not stop for a second. The attacks rained down one after another. Yaning realized that it was too late to retreat. The only way left was to fight back. He gritted his teeth, raised his rifle, and with a powerful swing hit the mutant on the tentacle, forcing it to recoil. The creature howled in pain and jerked its head up. Something flashed under its mouth, like metal hidden in flesh. The guy's attention was drawn to a strange light. It was a small ball with a red eye inside, and it was flickering ominously. A moment of thought played a cruel joke. The monster sensed weakness and rushed forward with a lightning-fast attack. Yaning instinctively raised his hand to block the blow, but he didn't have time to fully defend himself. The tentacle cut through his skin, and blood dripped onto the ground. At that moment he realized he was fighting more than one mutant. The second was still hiding, and if it weren't for him, the fight might have already ended. He frantically thought about where he could be, and suddenly realized that he had been sitting right in front of his eyes the whole time. The entangler was not somewhere in the forest, but right on the tree monster's back, clinging to it like a parasite. Then Yaning understood the point. The roar of the entangler strengthened his partner, but not for long. The effect would soon wear off, and he would retreat. The rifle was no longer fit for combat. It had cracked. All that remained was the dagger, which he quickly pulled out of its sheath. The wooden monster continued to advance furiously. Ning figured that it would most likely jump again like before. And so it happened. The creature rushed upward and fell on the place where the guy had stood a second ago. But Yaning was already on the monster's back, grabbing onto the tree flesh, preparing to strike from the closest possible range. Gripping the dagger's handle until his knuckles turned white, he drove the blade hard into the body of the entangler. The goal was clear: to separate the two mutants and eliminate each one separately, without their mutual support. With a powerful movement, he tore the second one off the first and jumped to the ground with him, rolling to the side. Rising to his feet, he clutched the entangler like a clot with an eye and crushed it in his palm with a crunch. The tree monster roared with renewed vigor. Having lost its companion, it began to twitch madly, noticeably weakening. The tentacles darted towards Yaning, wriggling in the air, trying to grab onto him, but the boy was already prepared. He activated his inner power, and his hands were enveloped in a yellow aura. Slowly, he reached for the dagger, giving it the same shining energy. With a few practiced movements, the guy destroyed the tentacles of the tree monster, leaving him no chance to defend himself. He couldn't imagine that without the support of the Entangler, the huge green carcass didn't even reach the strength of a first-level monster. The mutant, mad with rage, rushed into the attack with his mouth open, without thinking and completely ignoring fear and the instinct of self-preservation. Ye Ning tightly gripped both daggers, concentrated, and gathered all his strength to deliver the first decisive blow to the enemy. Without using too much energy, he deftly and quickly cut off the tentacles, causing damage that the monster could not recover from. As if saying goodbye, the boy with cold determination thrust both blades into the tree demon's eyes and said, "See you later." The monster's body burst into flames and literally exploded from the damage inflicted, instantly disappearing from reality after the impact. The system immediately sent out notifications. Ye Ning received psychic experience points for defeating such a dangerous mutant. As a reward, he also received armor made of dried wood, which, in his opinion, was more of a hindrance than a help in battle. But even such a fight gave him a psychic fruit, a useful artifact that increases life recovery by as much as 20%. The fruit also gave 1 extra point of strength, and the injured Ye Ning immediately used it to recover faster. Awakened usually get 4 points just for the rank of Major, and he killed 2 mutants and already got 1. Amazing. Meanwhile, the knights at the entrance to the forest felt a weakening of the pressure. The shots died down and the mutant's aura disappeared. After examining the surroundings, the knights realized that there was no one else there except that child, and began to suspect that he was involved. Half an hour after the battle, Ye Ning reached a special area where materials obtained from mutants could be sold. He took out a suitcase with monster parts to evaluate the loot and find out how much it was worth on the market. Despite the possibility of selling through the system, he chose cash and arrived at the Tianfeng safe zone for the transaction. The appraisers reported that the 4 items were worth 700 credits, as they could be used to create a good weapon. By apocalypse standards, this is a large sum. For it, you could buy meat for a long time or hire 6 fighters at once. Ye Ning agreed with the price and held out the card to check whether the promised amount had actually appeared in the account. He also asked if the vendors had any skill books, especially those related to sword techniques. The mustachioed salesman nodded and explained that they only had low-level books in stock. You couldn't find anything higher than D-class here. The salesgirl handed Ye Ning a tablet with 3 books on it, in case he found any of them interesting. The guy carefully studied each skill and came to the conclusion that all of this was useless garbage, not worth the money spent. Even with the divine sword system, it is important to choose skills wisely, because their effectiveness depends on the basic skills. For example, Sword Storm has great power, but due to the long activation time, it is unsuitable for battles with fast mutants. If the enemy dodges the skill activation, he will still have a chance to counterattack, and then the situation will become dangerous. The merchant offered to bring books from other zones if Ye Ning was willing to pay. Perhaps there would be higher-level skills there. Ye Ning stopped at 1 book, Fast Slashing Strike, and became curious about what would happen after leveling it up. The merchant didn't understand. The guy was selling valuable materials, but buying seemingly useless ones. Nevertheless, the seller agreed and told the girl to quickly pay the strange but generous guest. The book was carefully wrapped and handed over to the buyer. The exchange went smoothly, and both parties wished each other good luck. After checking the remaining credits, Ye Ning decided to spend some on something useful and pleasant for his younger sister. Xiaoan was delighted. Her brother brought her a bunch of delicious things that they had never tried in their normal life. He continued to unpack the bags, saying that now, with his new strength, he would be able to please her more and more often. He solemnly handed one of the jars of treats to his little sister, noting that he bought it especially for her. Xiaoan was surprised. According to her, only big bosses eat such things, and no one in her zone had tried them. Ye Ning patted his sister on the head and said that he was willing to do anything for her, as long as she was happy and didn't suffer anymore. When she fell asleep, he stood quietly next to her and smiled, watching the baby sleep peacefully while her mother was still at work. Putting the book he had bought next to him, he decided to immediately begin learning the new skill and see what would come of it. Taking the book in his hands, he summoned the divine sword system to begin the process of learning the acquired technique. Rays of light flashed, and the system announced, "The skill of fast-cutting blow has been successfully learned." Everything went well. After studying its properties, Yanning realized that the new technique was an excellent way to compensate for the slow activation of other strong skills. Now he wanted to test the technology in action. Reading about it was not enough. He needed to test it in a real fight. Having put on a special protective suit and a mask, the guy decided to go outside to find a suitable place for training. He headed to the outskirts of Tianfeng, an abandoned area where no one had lived or patrolled for a long time. This place was ideal for experiments. There were plenty of mutants here, and the risk of being noticed was minimal. He had the feeling that whether it was a past life or a present life, this area was completely unknown. But in his past life, he accidentally found a second-level mutant here that dropped a lot of high-level blue equipment. Because of his thoughts, the guy did not notice how one of the monsters released its slime under the guy's feet, and he could not move from the spot. Another zombie appeared from behind. This one was similar in stature to a human, but the color of the skin and eyes were not natural. Without wasting any time, he started running towards the guy in order to kill him. Opening his terrible mouth, he jumped up and intended to tear off the awakened man's head. Yanning tightened his grip on the dagger in his hand and prepared to defend himself. The zombie was already very close, and the guy, standing still because of the sticky mucus of the second mutant, killed the attacker with light movements of his hand. He's lucky it's just a zombie. If he'd encountered a stronger mutant, he'd be in much more danger. And fighting him glued to the ground would be much more difficult. Yanning decided that he should hurry up and find something better, but he still had no idea who was watching him. The last time they met, Yanning was a level 2 blue-equipped warrior, but he still suffered a defeat. Stopping at 2 abandoned buildings, he remembered that this was where the climber was supposed to be. Noticing the bars behind him, the boy wondered if she had been there in a past life. Perhaps he simply didn't pay attention to it then, but now he decided to make a trap out of it, cutting and bending the rods in the other direction. Suddenly, large splashes of water appeared in a certain place on the reservoir. A high-level mutant jumped out from there. It looked like a huge worm. And at the same moment he jumped into the attack. Yanning managed to dodge to the side, and the mutant hit his head in the place where the guy bent the sharp metal rods. Now he needs to deal with the worm as soon as possible before the climber appears again. Yanning, overjoyed ahead of time, approached the mutant from behind to attack from behind. Behind him, the guy heard strange sounds, as if something huge was jumping around the houses. The system notified that a second-level mutant of the middle stage, a rock climber, had appeared. Even the worm felt uneasy. And then he appeared in the guy's field of vision. The climber looked like a lizard, only blue. As a result, the guy will have to fight 2 mutants at the same time. The climber didn't wait long. He immediately attacked, and the guy dodged. He had the feeling that he was much faster than he was in his past life. Thanks to the blind spot directly under the light effect, it became much easier for the guy to dodge his attacks. But still, predicting his next actions is still a challenge. Yanning had no time to think. He needed to dodge the climber's attack, but the other mutant's attacks were making things more difficult. This time, the guy blocked the worm's next attack with a dagger. Having beaten her off, he miscalculated a little, and now he was even more wounded. The guy came here expecting to test a new skill, but judging by everything, using it now would not be the best decision. But the conditions were perfect for another technique. With these thoughts, Yanning pulled out a metal rod from his shoulder, and having thrown it away, he now stood between 2 mutants and carefully analyzed how best to act in this situation. Putting the dagger in his belt, he decided that the light of heavenly destruction would help him here. It was fast and designed for single targets. At the same time, 2 monsters decided to attack. At this moment, the boy remembered that the skill description indicated the chi sword. Yanning didn't know how far away he could work, but to be sure he decided to run closer. Taking into account all the nuances, He calculated that he could defeat two at once with one attack, although the light of heavenly destruction was designed for one target. Jumping in the air, he began to use this skill while being between both mutants, and if everything goes smoothly, he will destroy them. After the skill was completed, only black liquid and skin remains remained from the monsters in the air. In an instant, this too disappeared, leaving only a large mark on the ground in the form of a sun with a star in the center. He looked around and knew that a special skill shouldn't produce such an effect. Multiple system windows started popping up about gaining experience, materials, and equipment. At a military warning station, one of the workers noticed unknown energy fluctuations and ordered the alarm to be sounded. Many workers came running, not understanding why the alarm was sounded. One of those present explained that a surge of energy had been detected outside the city and suggested that there was a third-level awakened being there. But he knew that in their zone there was no awakened one with such a level. Maybe a big shot from another zone had arrived. They sent a team to that place to clarify the circumstances, and 20 minutes later they arrived. They examined the mark on the ground that Ye Ning had left. Using a special device, one of them measured that whoever used this skill had to use 4,000 units of psychic energy. In order not to die after using such a quantity of energy, one must be at least at the middle level of the third level. Researchers have realized one of them said that this is an emergency. Now they have to report it to the commander. On his way home, Ye Ning decided to look at the characteristics of his equipment. No wonder it cost 60,000 credit points in his previous life. When he got home, the guy sat down at the computer and decided to try posting an ad for the sale of his equipment. Not even a second has passed since the publication when the first client wrote. There is even more demand for it than the guy could offer himself. More and more new customers appeared. Ye Ning is confident that with such a number of customers, he should not have any problems with sales. One of them was ready to bargain for 300,000 and partially pay with resources, skills, food, or other equipment. Ye Ning replied that such equipment couldn't cost less than 300, but he was willing to consider exchanging it for white equipment or psychic fruits. The buyer ordered his men to turn everything over and find something related to the swords. They stood quietly in a column of two and nodded their heads in response to the order, saying, "It will be done." Half an hour later, they brought a lot of different metal equipment. According to the elder, this was not enough. Perhaps it was worth making a partial prepayment. Already in a raised voice, he ordered them to continue the search. They had little time. Watching the prepayment message, Ye Ning thought about how in his past life his mother and sister were on the edge and didn't have a single good day. But since he was reborn with such capabilities, why should they survive? What was the point of his rebirth then? This time he would take care of them. The client sent a message that they will collect everything else and the entire amount will be with him tomorrow. The next day, Ye Ning and Xiaoan went to Tianfeng Real Estate Company. A red-haired girl immediately approached them with an offer of help. The guy said that he needed a better apartment, mockingly thinking that this level 0 guy wants to rent an apartment here, but he can't afford the cost of even one brick. She said that the best apartment costs 40,000, quite expensive for them, and suggested looking at the one that costs 2,000. But Ye Ning said he would take the one that cost 40 and offered to formalize everything right away. The sister was shocked. The girl with a distrustful face said to transfer the money if he had it, and they could come today. The operation was cancelled due to lack of credit points. The worker immediately attacked him. Why did he come here if he didn't have money? Ye Ning asked to wait a little, and he received a message from the client. He wrote that he had found everything he needed and offered to make a deal. The guy looked at the smartphone screen and read the things that the client had prepared, despite the fact that it was white equipment. Altogether, it costs a lot. The transaction was successful, and 39,000 credit points were transferred to Ye Ning's account. The red-haired girl was stunned when she heard the amount. Her face immediately changed. She began to smile and speak ingratiatingly. She said that she would do everything he needed. Waving her hand towards the VIP lounge, she suggested that they discuss everything there. The operation was successful. He bought an apartment similar to a royal one, It was spacious and very beautiful. Yening handed the keys to his sister and told her to call her mother, but she looked at him and asked if he would go with her. But he replied that he still had something to do. He spent everything he got after killing the climber. Now he needs to quickly replenish his supplies. But most of the mutants were destroyed. Corpse Academy is the only open area outside the Tianfeng safe zone where psychic corpses can be obtained. Plus, there are also second-level mutants, and the rewards depend on how you show yourself. With SSS-level skills, Yening will be able to get them. The guy finally arrived at the C-level platform, the Corpse Academy. The voice that was built into the suit notified that the login was successful and the current number of players on the site was 14. The next voice, slightly different, announced that the tests at the Academy of Corpses site would begin in a minute. The current scene was like this: a normal setting, no paranormal phenomena, the enemies are mutants, zombies, and a few people. The action takes place 7 days after the zombie apocalypse begins. Participants must complete basic tasks to escape the scene. Yening, in turn, studied the basic tasks and additional tasks very carefully, while in the background someone was asking about this test. The fair-haired guy threw his hands on the table and said that he had already passed this test and was ready to take command of the entire group. The bald guy in the suit said that the test was quite difficult, and it would be wise to hand over the controls to someone with at least some experience. The first one got a little angry that they didn't trust him, and started to intimidate others by saying that this place is classified as medium and high difficulty levels. After arguing a bit among themselves, they noticed Yening, who was standing to the side. The blond guy approached the boy and said, in hopes of what, he decided to come here with a 0 level. Really, to his death? And with such questions, he tried to somehow touch Yening. In turn, the other participants simply stood and watched. The boy, having released a little of his aura, was angry that they were interfering with his studying the assignments and were also trying to hurt him. Zadira was still a little scared, but continued. They don't have time to babysit the kids, so if something doesn't work out for him, let him stay behind without losing confidence. He walked away from Yening and continued to stab with words. Turning to the other participants, he nevertheless took on the role of commander. He said that under no circumstances should participants attempt to complete tasks alone. Because he in turn decided last time that he could handle it, but ended up running into 2 bosses, most of the team died, and he was only able to survive thanks to 2 awakened second-level ones who fought to the last. He was scared to death and never got to show himself. Those were hard times. Analyzing his equipment, Yening realized that he didn't have much, so he probably wouldn't be able to save up psychic fruits. Many second-level awakened ones have a strength of up to 18 points, so it turns out that his strength has reached the second level. With such indicators and SSS-level skills, he can definitely become the best in the Corpse Academy. And with this thought in mind, he became even more determined. The new commander put forward the following plan. While the protective barrier has not disappeared, it is necessary to choose a mission to destroy the corpse as soon as possible. The black-haired girl from the team was very charmed by the guy and asked him not to leave her if they encountered any danger. He, in turn, embarrassed, promised that he would personally take care of her. Having gathered, they all set out to carry out the task. And then they saw Yening. He overtook them and ran to fight alone. The commander ordered that if he decided so, then let it be. The main thing is to make sure that they themselves do not fall behind each other. Full of determination and confidence in his abilities, Yening ran into the building and began to climb the steps up. A girl ran out to meet him asking for help. There was another one there, but she was looking somewhere in the other direction. Suddenly the girl's head changed color and began to acquire an incomprehensible but ugly appearance. She was a mutant. After killing them, he moved on. In his past life, his team members thought they were NPCs that needed to be saved, but ended up being eaten alive. The easiest way to get the equipment was to kill the mutant butcher, so Yening's next goal was to go higher to find it. Moving forward unnoticed, the blonde-haired man commanded that they needed to avoid fighting small enemies. Because supposedly the more monsters you kill at the beginning, the more monsters will attack you at the end. said the commander. As he approached the dump, he continued to say similar phrases, like they would need to hide once they found the boss, because the monsters would go berserk. The girl said that they had nothing to fear because the commander was with them, when suddenly another guy ordered them to be quiet. Soon the system notified that a second-level mid-level mutant had appeared. At the highest point of the dump sat this mutant. She turned towards a small noise coming from the squad. Without wasting any time, the commander went on the attack. He said that he was a defender and therefore could not help them in any way. Others had to cope on their own. In a minute, everyone was ready to attack. The archer took an attack position, and the bald guy released his metal claws. Arrows, charged particles of power, attacks of all fighters flew towards the mutant. While the commander held her back, the squad continued to launch more attacks towards the monster. This was their chance to completely destroy the monster, but for some unknown reason the commander began to retreat little by little. Everything happened very quickly. She lit up with a bright red light, and the commander in turn retreated even further. Suddenly she jumped on the shoulders of one of the guys in the squad, clinging to his head with her mouth. Nobody understood what was happening. The mutant knocked the guy to the ground while she was on top of him. The commander continued to retreat even further. With his shield, he tried to help the team somehow. Holding it with his power, he commanded to continue attacking. At the same time, Yanning climbed to one of the highest points in this place and still couldn't find the boss. He decided to see what was written in the system, but it notified him that the task of killing the butcher had already been completed. They were so desperate to defeat the second-level mutant that they didn't notice anything else. Another boss snuck up on them and raised a large sword from behind to kill one of the guys. He ended up cutting the blonde boy into 2 pieces. The commander watched what was happening with a grin. Everything turned out as he planned. He secretly took on another mission. This was a setup for the guys because it is more difficult for the commander to get good equipment during the dungeon clearing. In this case, he decided to sacrifice the entire team and take what the monsters drop. Cleverly pretending he knew nothing, he kicked the mutant woman and started screaming about who even thought of taking on a second mission. While she was lying on the ground, he moved on to the second boss. Now the commander attacks the butcher with such force that it seems his eyes will pop out of his head. Posing as an innocent defender, he continued to order the detachment to begin a new attack. Those, blinded and in ignorance of what was happening, watched with horror and a little delight as the leader fought against 2 bosses. At the same time, Yanning still managed to find them. After observing from the side for a while, he understood the commander's plan. However, he did not take into account in his plan that he could in turn throw Yanning. Since there were 2 more bosses hidden in this dungeon, he decided to summon them. He waved his dagger in front of them a little to provoke them into attacking. They didn't hesitate for a minute and immediately rushed towards the guy. And he jumped down from the high-rise building to the squad with 2 bosses. The same 2 bosses that he himself summoned jumped after him. In the midst of the unfolding battle, Yanning landed right in front of the commander. He looked at the guy in bewilderment, not understanding what he was doing there. The 2 monsters that jumped after Yanning had already captured the entire squad and were holding them in their tentacles. Seeing this picture, the commander was horrified. He was counting on only 2 bosses. Yanning patted the guy on the shoulder and asked if he didn't like it, but the blonde guy backed away even more. Now he was alone against 4 mutants. The squad was not visible on the horizon. Yanning in turn simply wished him luck. The boy moved everyone in the group to a safer place, away from the monsters. The boy who used to prick Yanning with words decided to ask for forgiveness for it. His example was followed by others, who felt embarrassed that he had saved them despite their attitude towards him a few hours earlier. Yanning told them to forget about it, but asked them to go find the escaped zombies and deal with them. He threw out a few more words and went to the bosses. One of the guys liked their savior. The girls just glanced at him in confusion as to how a guy could like a guy. Yanning landed at that very spot. In his previous life, he heard that the remains of a corpse could be used to obtain blue equipment. He peered into the rubble and looked for the skull. On a battlefield like this, it would be oh so hard to find. After some time, the system notified that he had received blue equipment, the skull of indignation. This skull was ideal for the psychic system. The psyche was underestimated because it does not compress information as destructively as other awakened. But with this buff, the blossoming of the mental system is just around the corner, Yening thought, and put the skull to his forehead. It began to spread throughout the head. The skull, like a liquid, began to be absorbed into the head and shimmer brightly. The guy screamed in pain as if lightning was burning through his body. Then his eyes lit up. Having taken control of these feelings, he decided to try out his new power. Using the power of thought, he lifted a huge stone up, after which he ordered it to break apart, and it obediently shattered into pieces. He then launched a huge number of small twigs from his power into the pile of stones. These small twigs burned holes in the rocks. Watching this, the boy was amused by the attack power. And if you pump it up, it will be much stronger, the boy thought. Now he decided to test the psychic research. Crossing 2 fingers, he put them to his forehead. The system notified the direction and distance, and Yening watched as one of the squad dealt with the zombies. He then moved his gaze to the girl who was researching the monsters in the ice. And suddenly, everything went dark. The notification system and the area he was watching disappeared. Removing 2 fingers from his forehead, Yening suggested that the current limit was about 29 meters. A new notification came from the system. All zombies in the Corpse Academy were destroyed. All missions completed. The exit is unlocked. When exiting the dungeon, it says that it was completed by Yening, and a window pops up with a list of all the rewards that the guy was able to receive. The rewards were quite generous. He later planned to sell the white gear online. After pressing the Get Gear button, he was curious about what would drop from the blue gear. A huge blue ball appeared in front of him, spinning in the air, and a little later it turned out that it contained thunder boots. They increased agility by 10 points. Yening assumed that they probably made him awaken to agility. He immediately put them on and decided to go on a second-level mission. But first I decided to take a look at the Heavenly Wind Mission Center. After greeting the girl, he demanded a mission to increase his level. She said that he probably needed an increase from 0 to 1 level. After checking the availability, he said he wanted to take all 4 level 2 missions. The girl was shocked. She didn't believe that some guy could complete all 4 missions, so she asked again. The questionnaire showed that he was level 0. The girl told the guy that he can't take missions that are higher than his level. And she didn't even mention that he wanted 4 at once. Except for those awakened in 2 systems, everyone must take 1. Yening said with a bored look that if you fail 1 mission, 50% of the main stat points will be deducted, and if all, you can die. To all this he said that he would be able to survive the consequences and put his hand on a small blue ball in order to call up the power rating. The whole room was filled with bright rays emitted by the ball. It showed the guy's strength. The girl watched what was happening with her mouth open. This was the last step of the first level. Yening asked again if he could take on these missions now that he had proven his strength. The girl had not yet recovered from the shock, as the ball that measured the guy's strength began to crack. "Isn't that Yening, an SSS-level talent?" The captain of the Heavenly Wind Safe Zone walked into the room with this question. "It's late. You're level 0 and still here to take missions," Captain Huang Xiao continued. He looked at the boy with encouraging words. At this moment, the girl intervened. She decided to explain to the captain that Yening was not a 0 level. But a squad came into the room with a report. They said that traces of a 3rd-level battle were found in the Corpse Academy. The authorities ordered them to conduct an emergency investigation. Everyone needs to be on guard. Yening watched the troops leave the room with a smile on his face. A small detachment with the commander of Zhenjiang County arrived at the Heavenly Wind Zoo. This place is now a haven for the dead. Since his son was selected by Program A, he decided to help him get the blue gear. Heavenly Wind was abandoned because of Yening's talent. "Aren't they now more vulnerable than ever?" the captain said. He also decided to ask again whether there really is a 2nd-level peak here that is about to reach 3rd level. One of the soldiers told the commander not to worry, because the information was absolutely reliable, and the equipment could be obtained from the tiger, the dead one. The commander was glad that he could get blue equipment here, and, in order not to waste a minute, he ordered them to move out. On the way, they came up with a little plan. The soldiers would hold off the other monsters, and Hong Gang would have to face the mutant one-on-one. Yaning was already standing on one of the abandoned houses. He came here for the same reason as the squad. 2 of the 4 leveling missions are in the Asylum of the Dead, so the guy will want to combine them. Using psychic research, he began to explore the local area, and he found people who also came to hunt mutants. He noticed that among them there was even a 3rd-level awakened one. Looking at his face, he suddenly looked towards Yaning. The guy immediately deactivated the psychic probe. Getting the mutant won't be easy. If they catch him, Yaning's mission will fail. Without another second's delay, he jumped off the roof and went into action. The squad and their commander were surrounded by a dead dog and a bloody bear. By trying to attack one by one, they wanted to push the mutants away from the commander. 2 of the squad volunteered to fight the dead dog. At that moment, you could feel this oppressive pressure over the entire zoo. It was a dead tiger, and Hong Gang came here for him. The commander released more of his power and looked at the mutant with a smirk on his face. Opening its mouth, the monster ran and began to attack its enemy first. Yaning watched from the bushes, analyzing the captain's strength and why he came here. He must complete this mission at all costs, and it would be nice to get the blue gear. Taking his loot would be unethical, and there is no point in fighting the 3rd level, but if he can't defeat the monster... The guy thought. Now on the site, the monsters are not only scattered, but also located far from each other. Yaning only has one chance to use Heavenly Light Rift. If the distance is too far, some changes will occur. At this time, the captain and the mutant continued their fight, attacking in different ways and using different techniques. He jumped into the air and released more force, hitting the mutant in the head with his spear. The wind from the blow blew towards the guy. He assumed that perhaps he had a dual system of strength and agility. After doing a somersault in the air and gaining even more strength, the captain prepared to deliver another blow to the monster's head. Shouting lightning in the air, his spear flew down towards the monster, and together with the lightning, a powerful blow was dealt. The monster did a somersault, and while the captain was in the air with lightning, without wasting much time, he hit Hong Gang with his tail, but he managed to block it. Since the blow was strong, the captain flew back a decent distance. He rolled on the ground until he hit the wall, blood pouring out of his mouth, although he expected this from an energetic 3-level mutant. Rising to his feet, Hong realized that there was no way out of this situation without a special technique. He swung and released more of his power, creating waves of aura that came out from him. It was a furious fire strike. Finally, he struck, but he struck the air. All the force that came from the spear, and from it in a strong stream, struck the mutant. He howled in terrible pain. Hun's power was still affecting him, and each time it dealt more and more damage. He eventually managed to defeat the mutant. At this time, the squad fought with other mutants, but they were much weaker than the monster. One of them reported that the commander had dealt with the boss. Now they needed to go back, and he offered to cover them while they retreated. Fighting off the bloody bear, the soldiers began to retreat. Also, the girl who fought with the dead dog began to simply run away from him. It was a very good coincidence that the squad retreated together, and it turned out that the monsters also pursued them together. For Yaning, this was the right distance and time to use the sword storm skill. Almost activating the skill, the guy stopped. A red light began to spread in the forest, and an aura that appeared out of nowhere was building up. All the soldiers had already gathered around the commander, and right next to them, red smoke began to spread. In this smoke, 2 bright red eyes sparkled. It was a dead tiger. The captain still hadn't killed him. Yaning watched everything and realized that he had no choice but to fight the mutant. The monsters surrounded the squad from all sides. They were caught off guard, sitting in the bushes. The guy activated the skill Heavenly Light Crack. The attack happened very quickly. In the form of a spiral that twisted very quickly, it flew out of the bushes, and she struck 3 monsters at once, they were already lying lifeless on the ground. Juan watched the events closely and assumed that this might be a third-level attack from the highest level. The whole squad was angry because someone stole their loot right in front of their noses. The bald soldier ordered the commander to concentrate on their target. He looked at the dead monster and shouted back to the soldier to stop yelling. He himself understood everything perfectly well. Juan was shaking with anger. He couldn't believe that someone could take the loot so easily, and realizing that the guy is probably several times stronger than him, so he can't resist the stranger, and he is also obliged to report everything to Commander Xiao. As he left the place where Ye Ning had been hiding, he simultaneously looked at what the monsters had dropped on him. After looking at everything carefully, he ordered the system to show the tiger gloves of indignation. Having studied the characteristics of the gloves, it became clear to the guy why the commander tried so hard to get this equipment. He put gloves on his hands. They were red. Captain Huang Xiao searched the Academy of the Dead all night, but was unable to find any clues about the third-level creature. The soldier standing opposite him replied that after their investigation, they had again discovered 2 third-level psychic signals. The captain immediately stood up and yelled, "There are 2 of them again? Could it be that their heavenly storm had run into a third-level nest?" Quickly putting on his cloak, he left the table and ordered the soldier to raise everyone. If they don't have any leads when Commander Xiao returns, they'll be in big trouble. The soldier nodded in response. Honggang and his men arrived at the Heavenly Wind safe zone. His face was gloomy, clearly not just coming to talk, but to demand an explanation. Huang Xiao came out to meet them. He reported that the commander was now on the defensive line and calmly asked what had caused Hong such anxiety. Hong narrowed his eyes suspiciously and asked directly, "Who is he anyway? And is it possible to talk to someone about the incident that happened in the Garden of the Dead?" Huang introduced himself and said that he was Commander Xiao's right hand. Since the boss was not there, he was willing to listen and discuss everything for him. Hun couldn't hold back. His voice broke into a scream. He almost got the equipment in the Garden of the Dead, but the loot was taken away by a certain third level, like a ghost. Huan froze, squinting. He remembered that 2 new Awoken had been discovered in the region recently. It seemed one of them had been right in front of him. Hong was angry. Someone from the third level, connected to the Xiao region, stole his loot and didn't even bother to hide, just left as if it was normal. Huang grabbed his wrist tightly and reminded him, in the Heavenly Storm, there was only one level 3, and that was Commander Xiao. There simply couldn't be more. Hong broke away and declared that he would go straight to the front line to the commander himself. He wanted an explanation and was not going to listen to excuses. He waved his hand at the soldiers, and they followed him. Juan, watching them, felt that all this could develop into a serious internal conflict. He sighed heavily and immediately contacted the commander to tell him everything. This matter had already gone beyond a simple misunderstanding. Commander Xiao listened to the report in confusion. How could there be another third level if there shouldn't be anyone else besides him? If there were 2 more awakened ones hiding in the sky storm, the situation would become dangerous. The commander immediately ordered an investigation. Juan confirmed the order and promised to send people to every corner to find any traces of the sale of the stolen equipment. Meanwhile, Ye Ning only had 2 trials left to complete, Wind Wings and Survival, to reach a new level of strength. One of them received a request, a rare item, Wings of Wind. Although it is a low rank, it could be useful later. One of the merchants wrote to Ye Ning that he could get the wings. He immediately asked how much he was willing to pay, since the thing was rare. Ye Ning offered 800. The merchant realized that the player was not poor and decided to raise the price to get more benefit from the deal. He said that he worked hard for these wings, so their price is 1,000. He hoped that the guy would give in and agree. But Ye Ning was in no hurry to pay more. He realized that the seller was desperate and decided to press to reduce the price as much as possible. He wrote, "You don't even know the real price, you manipulate me and hope for naivety. Then keep them for yourself, I don't care." The merchant was speechless. He wanted to cheat the buyer out of his money, but now he realized that he was not dealing with a simpleton, but with an experienced player. He gave in. He wrote that he agreed to 800, as was initially proposed, if only he didn't lose the client and end up with nothing. But Yening was in no hurry to agree. He was going to pay back in the same coin and show that manipulation did not work here. He replied, "Now the price is 400, no more. Either you sell it now, or someone else will sell it to me cheaper. Decide for yourself." The old man sighed, realizing that he had no choice. He agreed and handed over the wings. Yening had won the bargaining again. All that remains is the dungeon, the youth educational center. This place scares everyone who has ever been there. It's different from the others. The test isn't in combat skills, but in mental resistance. No one got SSS. Yening approached the dungeon fully equipped. Everything he had obtained before should now help him here. A window appeared on the screen asking if he could enter. Without thinking, he clicked yes. This was a chance to test his limits. He knew that inside him there was no enemy with a sword but a battle with himself. And this was the real test for any fighter. Yening teleported to a city whose sky was red. Besides the guy himself, there were other people here. They also just got here. Among them were a girl named Huang Xia and two guys, Fan Yun and Lian Tengfei. There was also an older man. His name was Jipin. He drew everyone's attention to himself and said that he had the highest degree of level 1. He specialized in willpower and asked the guys if they specialized in it too. Tengfei was a little indignant. Who else would choose such a leveling mission except for representatives of this type? The girl standing next to him nodded. The old man agreed. Although they are weak in battle, he hopes that this dungeon will test their will, and perhaps they definitely have a chance of success. Old man Jipin offered to lead the team since it wasn't the first time he had gone through similar dungeons. The guys agreed with him since it was their first time here. The old man noticed Yening, who was standing to the side at the time, and didn't say anything. He asked the guy if he had any objections. The young man responded that he had no objections, and that since he was in a hurry, it was time to start. The mission this time was to find a ghost in Hua School and seal it. When the boys saw the mission, they were scared. Do ghosts really exist? Jipin made a reasonable face and ordered the group not to panic. He said that although they call it a ghost, in reality it is the will of a person, defiled by psychic energy before death. In essence, this is a variation of the attribute will, he continued. But ghosts are still strong. They can not only protect themselves from damage, but also control the will of others. According to the clue, they should go around the building and look for clues. The old man recommended that if they encounter a ghost, they should run away immediately. Jipping continued to give orders about what to do and where to go and do it with. Eventually, Yening was told to act alone. The guy started his search from the archive. It was almost empty. There were only scraps of newspapers lying around. Picking up one of them, it said that a certain teacher was suspected of abusing Wang Fan, who committed suicide. And then a ghost appeared from above, a four-armed black-haired girl. The guy got a little scared. Yening immediately assumed that this might be that same Wang Fan. Shouting, "The will is perfect," he dropped to one knee and released purple waves to capture the ghost. Then he moved will transformation and released more purple power and prepared to attack. These same waves turned into long stripes that Yening directed at the ghost, cutting the clothes down to the flesh on it. And then she jumped out of the window and ran away without a trace. It was probably to test Yening's will. After some time, the group began to share their findings. They investigated that there was a fire, a contract, and that is, compensation for moral damages. From all the information, Jipin concluded that Wang Fang was raped by a teacher. Her family demanded compensation, but to no avail. After that, she committed suicide and turned into a ghost, then set a fire. Later, the priests came and sealed her, but the talisman broke. The old man asked everyone to gather in room 201 of the dormitory. He assumed that there should be a talisman there, but Yening was doubtful about it. Teng Feng agreed with the old man. The ghost is Wang Fang. He suggested that they meet her sooner. At first, Yun noticed someone's hair in the darkness and screamed in horror. Then Teng Feng noticed them too. Both of them were very scared and decided to run to Jiping because it was most likely Wang Fan. The old man decided to wait for the two here, and Ye Ning and Huang went to look for the talisman. The girl offered to open the door with her willpower, but the guy, without thinking twice, went and kicked her out. The old man wondered if he was really the same type as all the others. The door flew out into a small, dark corridor. Shining a flashlight, Huan noticed a light envelope, examining it. She found a talisman inside. Ye Ning shone his light on the wall and discovered a trace of a figure. And deciding to check with the girl, didn't their evidence mention that a teacher who burned alive lived in that room? But she answered, no. Running away from the ghost, screaming and calling out to the old man, the boys ran to the place where they were supposed to gather a little earlier all together. The ghost's eyes bulged, and he grabbed Yun by the shoulder, making him scream even louder in horror. The ghost released her power. Black and red power came out of the guy's mouth. His eyes turned red. Teng Feng broke out in a cold sweat and shouted his name, but he no longer responded to him and did not even ask for help. He turned into a monster with fangs instead of teeth, huge sharp sinuses instead of hands, and his skin was pale blue. Yun is now possessed. Realizing this, Teng Feng began to run away, but the ghost attacked him and bit his neck, and the guy cried out for help until the very end. The old man cried out, said that he would deal with the ghost himself, and ordered them to quickly activate the talisman. Huan said she would take care of it, but she no longer had the ticket in her hands. Yanning snatched it and immediately activated it. The old man used the skill Bind by Will, and a circle appeared behind his back from which chains stretched out. He pointed them at the ghost, which in turn wrapped around her waist and shoulders, preventing her from moving in any way. The old man shouted at Yanning to hurry up, because he wouldn't be able to hold her back for that long. The guy was already holding the talisman, and it began to glow with a slightly brighter light. And suddenly, he applied it not to the ghost, but to the back of Jiping himself. The old man shouted towards Yanning that he was an idiot. If he wasted the amulet, everyone would die. But the guy pointed his finger at Fan Yun, who fell when the amulet was glued to the old man. Huan finally realized that perhaps he was the ghost that needed to be sealed. Teacher Tao pretended to be the enlightened Jiping, then used his power to transform into a fake ghost and test the team's strength. At first he fell for the guy, but realizing that he was a tough nut to crack, he turned his attention to Fan Yun, who was weaker in willpower. He then pretended to fight the ghost and talked about sealing Yun. He wanted to let them fail the mission and destroy everyone. Huang realized that if she had managed to throw the talisman at Yun, then everyone would probably have been doomed to die. Yanning ordered the old man to stop pretending, since he was now sealed and there was no point in continuing. The boy released some of his power towards the old man and shouted for him to show his true face. 3 small arcs struck Jiping right in the stomach. While standing on his feet, his hands and head fell back from the charged particles, and it turned out that he fell in an unnatural position. The skin on his face began to peel off in pieces, and he was gradually covered in a black fog. And so the old man turned into who he really was, shouting to Yanning how he knew he had disguised himself so well. But he replied that the ghost was sealed and their mission was over. Why talk about it now? Rising, the monster spoke about a hidden mission. Yanning was a little confused about what kind of hidden mission they were talking about. The ghost said that after its completion, the system itself would make him disperse, and immediately asked how he understood that he dispersed of his own free will. The guy thought that if he didn't know that he had a hidden mission, he most likely wouldn't have been able to get an SSS rating. The guy started moving towards the old man and said that for now he would believe him. But before he said, the old man must say why he needs to know this. Teacher Tao replied that Ye Ning can awaken the mind when the dungeon is reset. The previous memories are retained. That's why it's better to reveal your trump card. Learn about the disadvantage and improve your disguise next time, and kill even more awakened ones. Huan was horrified. She hadn't heard the word reason since the apocalypse. This was not a level D dungeon, but a level B or even higher. The ghost said that Yanning was indeed smart and right, and stretched out his hand to the guy, asking if he would tell him now. Yanning said it was quite simple. The second mission hint was, don't trust lies, because the female ghost never said anything. The guy also noticed that Tao wasn't speaking in the group chat, which meant he couldn't use the system. In addition, the clues said that Wang Fan allegedly committed suicide. It was not clear, but it was obvious to the teacher of the sealing talismans used to seal Wang Fan. It should be in her graveyard, not in the teacher's dormitory. That's why Yanning suggested that he raped her. After that, she tried to commit suicide, but instead ended up in a mental hospital and was unable to sue you. The family applied to the school for compensation but were unsuccessful, so they started this fire in retaliation. Before his death, the willpower was polluted and the teacher became a ghost. Later, the school hired priests to exorcise the ghost and seal it. The girl agreed with Yanning and added that after meeting the female ghost, he was not afraid. Could he really be a level 1 willpower? The teacher smiled and agreed with the girl, but said that she was only partly right, and he started making excuses, saying that a female ghost can't talk until it's sealed, and he didn't send messages because he was looking for clues. She might have been raped in the dorm, so it's normal for her to linger there. Yanning admits that this is not enough to convince him. He will only tell him the main thing before he disappears. If he wants to know, let him wait. Smiling and praising the boy for how incredible he was, Teacher Tao accepted the challenge, and he began to dissolve into thin air, gray gunpowder emanating from his limbs, which eventually simply disappeared. According to their agreement, Yanning was supposed to tell how he guessed, but he deliberately delayed. The teacher almost completely dissipated, only his head remained, and he couldn't help but start yelling at Yanning because he was hesitating. With a villainous grin and quite pleased with himself, Yanning said that he simply guessed. Dissatisfied with Tao's answer, he managed to call the guy a soft word before completely dispersing. Wan herself was surprised that he could just guess. Putting his hand on the girl's shoulder, he said that there was no time to talk, and it was time to leave here. Wan continued asking if he had really guessed. The guy replied, no. The ghost's mistake was that he had named the room number with the talisman. In the end, there are no clues indicating this. Only a ghost could know about this. But why would he tell it? The guy reasoned out loud. The girl was shocked at how smart and resourceful Yanning was. The system sent a message about the rewards received in the dungeon. This time, there was a bead that could save the owner's life. Yanning arrived at the Heavenly Wind safe zone that evening. He came here to confirm the completion of the missions. The girl recognized the guy. He was the one who took several pieces at once 2 days ago. She asked what mission he had already completed. He continued to look at her, and she in turn checked the mission completion database. The girl jumped up in her chair in surprise. In 2 days, he completed all 4 missions. But Yanning was in a hurry, so he asked the worker to hurry up. She felt a little awkward, but she began to confirm the tasks to the guy with quick movements on the keyboard. It took Yanning less than 2 weeks to reach the 2nd level. Of course, with the sword god system, it was several times faster than in his previous life. The girl found this strange and decided to immediately tell her elders about it. Walking along a crowded road, the guy thought about the bonuses from the equipment. For the 2nd level, the current characteristics were quite good. To practice the sword skill, he needs another 23 points, and in total, he needs at least 200,000 credit points to buy more psychic fruits. It will be difficult to get such a number of points, since all the good dungeons have already been completed. Only the Death Factory remains. Breaking away from his thoughts, the guy noticed the red sky, as if a clot of clouds was spinning in one place. The guy assumed that it could be a wave of zombies. In a past life, a global zombie outbreak happened a year later, but there were smaller outbreaks, and one of them was supposed to happen next week. Turning his motorcycle around, Yanning decided to notify Commander Xiao about this so that he could take precautions earlier. A message from Yanning came on board the fighter, asking him to turn his men around because there would be a zombie wave within a week. The captain thought that since the guy had not been given an SS rank, he had decided to chase after big headlines. It's been 40 years since the great battle with the zombies. There's peace. All the zombies are locked in abandoned cities, and a new outbreak is unlikely. Instead of wasting resources on unlikely threats, the priority remains finding the lurking third level. Captain Xiao came to the conference room, which was located in the Tianfen safe zone. He asked Huan Xiao if he had found any important clues about the three-level guy. He handed over a tablet with information and replied that the most suspicious guy was Ye Ning. The captain looked closely at the touchscreen and did not understand how this was even possible. After careful investigation, it was found that most of the high-ranking materials are sold by Ye Ning, and the timing of the sale coincides with the appearance of the third level. And besides, he recently bought himself a spiritual residence, which ordinary people cannot afford. After listening to Huan, the captain asked again whether, even with so many arguments, they were sure that he had at least some relation to the three-level. Liao Tian said to think about it. Ye Ning has only been awakened for a week. Even with SSS-rank talent, it is impossible to level up so quickly. Even General John, an awakened SS level, achieved the same result in a much longer period of time, he continued. He slammed his palm on the table and said that this made him believe that Ye Ning was a level 3 who was covering for him. Captain Xiao listened to Tian. Perhaps the other third-levelers saw potential in him and are secretly raising him as an experiment. He suggested finding that 3-level one and making him work for them. Then in that case, there would be no reason to panic. At this moment, they received a message from the Mission Control Center that Ye Ning had completed 4 second-level missions. Both captains were shocked. Ye Ning had completed the second-level tasks again. It was impossible. No one wanted to believe it. According to Liao's theory, the 3-tiered one took Ye Ning on missions and let him collect the remains of monsters. But Liao himself was not sure about this now. Captain Xiao ordered people to be sent to monitor Ye Ning's house and also to the abandoned cities to prevent a possible wave of zombies. But he himself still let the thought slip that this boy might have the third level. Then the puzzle would come together. Huan Xiao accepted the order from the commander and added that everything would be carried out. As he was leaving, the captain ordered to get blue gear for Hong Gang so that he wouldn't bother him. After waiting for the sword drill's recovery time to end, Ye Ning was about to enter the Death Factory dungeon. This dungeon consists of 7 waves. For completing each wave, you get 3 points and time to vote whether to refuse to clear it. The first wave was supposed to start in 5 minutes. Having looked at everyone carefully, the guy realized that these were unusual people. Some, judging by their appearance, were from the same faction. But among all of them, there were her awakened third level, and from one of them the guy had a bad feeling that something bad would happen because of her. According to the standard, someone appeared who really wanted to command others, and he began to say that in a military-type dungeon, coordinated work was needed. He was a second-level awakened, and when he saw a third-level girl, he immediately changed his mind about putting forward his candidacy. Lin Lan, for some unknown reason, hit the guy who was just talking about her. From the force of the blow, he flew back and hit the ground so hard that blood gushed from his mouth. She quickly jumped towards him. Ye Ning, in turn, continued to watch what was happening. Lin ostentatiously pressed her foot on his head so that everyone would understand how strong she was. The guy's comrades decided to stand up for him. They didn't understand what Zhang Lin said wrong and why they treated him like that. But Lin Lan ordered her men to surround the rest, and if anyone dared to resist, she would personally finish them off. They immediately accepted the order and began to carry it out. They surrounded the guys who were defending their friend and Ye Ning as well. There were also 2 friends with a second-tier pick. One realized that this was a farm group, the other urged to deal with the 3-tier one. Ye Ning knew that the farming groups used the awakened ones as cannon fodder, and while they were fighting, the group would reap all the benefits of the dungeon. If the awakened and mutants see each other as a target to hunt, then farmers see humans as bait to use. A friend of the guy who was attacked asked to vote to leave. Their votes should definitely be more. The 3-level one stamped her foot unsatisfactorily, causing pieces of earth to fly. She said that she was now taking command of the squad, and if they survived the 6th wave and gave up all their rewards, she would spare their lives. Yanning didn't believe her words, and if the heavenly ray wasn't on cooldown, he would be able to combine it with Sword Storm and destroy the scum. Not knowing if she had protective blue gear, the guy decided not to risk it, because he might not kill her with one blow, and then it would be the end. Since the first wave was about to start, Lin Lan ordered everyone to state their name, rank, and abilities. She must know who she was dealing with. 2 people responded at once, Song Gang and Lin Teng, both at peak level 2, the former with a strength class, specializing in melee, agility, and long-range attacks. Then 2 more responded, specializing in long-range attacks and hand-to-hand combat. Next was Ye Ning. He said that he had recently advanced to level 2, the willpower class, and specialized in long-range attacks. Lin Lan was surprised by the class of willpower, and even in the dungeon she rarely met such a person. She also liked the guy's face. Laughing, she walked away from Ye Ning. She considered the guy's presence here a waste of his cute face. The first wave has begun. Number of enemies, 100 zombies and 2 first-level mutants. She ordered those who were at the peak of level 2 to lead the attack, and she herself stood behind the entire squad using these people as a human shield. If she feels that someone is slacking off, she will personally turn his bones into dust. The squad was ready to fight. They needed to make every effort to pass this stage. Green with long tongues like snakes, the monsters began to advance. Lin and Song decided to take on the eaters, let the rest deal with the zombies. Lin immediately hit the creatures on their heads with his big hammer. Another guy from the squad used the skill Ice Spikes. The attack was massive, and most of the monsters were pierced by the spikes and fell breathless. Ye Ning didn't stand idly by either. He attacked the very last monster with his power. He hit straight in the head, and only one, thus demonstrating how weak the guy is. The reaction of the guy on the side was not long in coming. He considered the blows by willpower too weak. From above, the farm group watched the battle of the awakened. The girl was very amused by Ye Lin, how he had the courage to come here. If the awakened ones hadn't protected him, he would have died already. And this was only the first wave. Lin Lan was surprised how he would deal with the others later. After some time, the first wave was successfully completed. An hour later, the third one too. The fourth one was supposed to start in 3 minutes. The guys already felt how the difficulty was starting to increase, and the possibility of second-level mutants appearing increased even more. Some of them were indignant that Lin was not helping them. She, in turn, began to despise them, saying that this was only the 3rd wave, and they were already peeing their pants. In the 3 level, there were suspicions that the guys had deceived her with their indicators. Otherwise, how could they explain that they were such weaklings? After these words, she turned towards Ye Ning and asked in surprise that he was still alive and without a single scratch. The boy was a little embarrassed by these words, but replied that he was just lucky. The guy in the squad was very angry because they were doing all the hard work, and he was just firing off his weak willpower punches. The other one at the same time suspected that Ye Ning had an ace up his sleeve. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to reach level 2. He would definitely be useful. He had to wait. The group of fighters waited for the 4th wave. There were 400 zombies and 9 mutants of the 1st and 2nd levels together. The Hammerman and Archer decided to take on the 2nd-tier mutant and let the 2nd-tier ones take on the rest of the mutants. And those who can't handle them, let them fight zombies. The Hammerman jumped up and dodged the Zombie King's attack. Lin Teng immediately released an arrow to cover his partner's back. A monster crept up on one of the archers, but he could not hear anything other than the battle due to the noise of the battle. Swinging and attacking him from behind, the mutant took the guy's head off in one motion. Each person in the squad fought with a different weapon, but was quite proficient in wielding it. The dark-haired boy pierced the mutant's stomach with his spear, and a blue but slightly transparent liquid spilled out. When it hit the guy, it burned his skin. Most likely it was some kind of acid. Seeing his partner on his knees, one of the guys immediately decided to attack the monster from behind with the Ice Spike skill. The monster was too fast, but the blonde had to finish it off, as almost the entire squad was destroyed. Yaning realized that at this rate they wouldn't get to the sixth wave, and he would have to use his trump card. The monster, standing right in front of the guy, released its power, which could instantly burn the entire body. Yaning managed to react and grabbed him by the jacket and jumped back a long distance with him. And he activated his telekinesis skill. A small projection of a purple sword appeared on the guy's palm. And then, with one movement, he struck the monster standing several meters further away. He tried to kill as many mutants as possible along with the zombies. The blonde guy was surprised that he had just said that this guy was useless, but he still thanked him for saving him. Yaning ordered not to relax because there were still first-level mutants and zombies, and the rescued boy immediately decided to deal with one of them. Lin Lan realized that Yaning had more than one such ace up his sleeve, and his speed was probably given to him by the boots that were blue equipment. Her subject offered to get rid of him, but she said that this was probably all he was capable of, and ordered to keep an eye on the guys of the second-level peak. The fourth wave was completed in half an hour, and the fifth is due to begin in 3 minutes. Most of the fighters were seriously wounded, and the hammerman and archer were almost exhausted, but they did not give up hope of killing Lin. The guys also noticed that Yaning was not just a willpower-class fighter, and that he might help them kill Lin, so they decided not to let him die first. The fifth wave has already begun. In each of them, the number of different creatures was more and more. In this one, there were 2 mutants of the second-level peak. The mutant centipede immediately grabbed the blonde man with its tail. It was becoming increasingly difficult for Yaning to deal with mutants without using basic techniques. It took forever to find his weakness. 2 mutants surrounded the guys of the second-level peak. They decided to use all the spare trump cards. Otherwise, they won't be able to survive. The archer used the skill Ice Arrow while shooting an arrow at the flying monster. The hammer fighter came up against another monster that was no less powerful than the first one. A pleased Lin Lan watched as they tried to keep all their techniques a secret so they could kill her later, but now they were using them against monsters. While Yaning was attacking one mutant from a distance, another one jumped up behind him, several times larger and stronger than the first one. And with his mouth he hit the place where the guy was. You could see how pieces of earth flew off from that place. The hammerman and the archer looked at this in horror and realized that they were too late. The guy could not be saved, and he was probably already dead. But then the monster suddenly shattered into pieces, and Yaning jumped out from that place. Everyone who remained alive was in shock, even Lin Lan. He had another ace up his sleeve. The boys decided to focus their fire on the second zombie, the spider, because they might have a chance to survive this wave. Yaning climbed up the centipede's body with his telekinesis skill activated. He found his weak spot and took careful aim, and he pierced one of his 4 eyes with telekinesis. The guy decided to drill through it, and the visual chalk of telekinesis began to rotate at the place where the puncture was. Concentrating some more power in his hand, he focused on another attack. A huge stream of yellow power quickly crashed into the centipede monster. Lin and Song watched as Yaning destroyed the high-level mutant. Maybe they have a chance to kill Lan if they all attack together. The 3 level 1 realized that they had found a fat sheep that they could profit from. She took on the next wave and ordered everyone in the squad to be killed, except for Yelin, to break his leg so that she could enjoy his screams. The guys guessed that Lan would join them in the next wave and decided that they could simply wound her so that Yaning could deliver the final blow. In the 6th wave, there were no regular zombies. There were only second-level mutants, and Peak Second Lan immediately rushed into the attack and ordered everyone to give it their all. This was the last wave. She promised that if the guys could hold out until the end, she would simply take their share and leave them alive. She took on the second-tier peak mutant Berserker Zombie and instructed the others to focus on the remaining mutants. But the mutant was not so weak. He swung with all his might and tried to cut the girl apart. She managed to dodge and immediately go on a counterattack. With a powerful kick, she broke the mutant's sword into 2 halves. This made him even more angry, and he opened his mouth and rushed at her. Using the skill Blood Shield, he covered her completely and prevented the mutant from biting her in any way. While fighting the monster, Yening watched the girl out of the corner of his eye. She had a dual class, strength and agility. She probably had something else in store. He decided that he couldn't act rashly. Any miscalculation could cost his life. Lin and Song urged the remaining boys not to waste their strength, because when Lan finished off the monster, she would immediately take their heads. Having hit the mutant, Lan bought herself some time and went down to the guys below. They had planned this, watching her approach. Sun gave the order for everyone to get ready. Lan, attacking another monster, asked Sun to distract the monster so that she could destroy it. He watched her closely and replied, "Okay, ma'am." Waiting for Lan to get into a suitable position, Lin released an arrow of spiritual flame. Sun also prepared to attack her with his shield, and from a third side, a mutant was approaching. Yening had already foreseen that things were bad. The attack was too early. Lan would never fall into this trap. She had planned everything, and the arrow hit the man, causing a small explosion. Lin screamed. He realized that the attack had hit Brother Song. Lan managed to dodge, and Song lay stunned on the ground. She looked at him with disdain. Did he really think that she would not notice anything? While fighting, Yening continued to watch her. Was she somehow able to transfer the damage she received to other people, or had she switched places with Song? Even more distraught that the Hammerman forced her to use his trump card, she eventually killed the monster. With great speed, Lan immediately rushed towards Lin Ten, saying that he played well. The blow to her stomach made it possible to feel the shock wave radiating from her. Having knocked the boy to the ground, she began to cripple his right arm first, to see how long he could hold out. But having decided that she would finish off the zombies, Galena ordered her squad to kill the guys and collect loot from them. One of them put a needle to Lin's eye and ordered him to give up everything he had acquired in this dungeon. Otherwise, he would beg for a quick death. The needle was not simple. In order to hurry the guy with the answer, he decided to take his left hand first. One of the guys screamed that when they finished him off, he would become a ghost and haunt them for the rest of his life. Unexpectedly for everyone, Yening raised his hands and said that he would give everything, but so that they would not torture or kill him. The next wave was his chance, and until this wave was over, he needed to stall for time. After the sixth wave ended, the participants had to vote to stay or leave. At this time, Yening decided to act. He voted for the seventh wave on the hardest difficulty. That way the advantage wasn't required, and the dungeon would continue without a vote. Everyone from Lin Lan's group was horrified, because she said that they would leave after the sixth wave, and there was no vote among the voters. Lying on the ground, Sun laughed hysterically. He decided that this was karma, and they would all die together. The girl got angry, and because of Sun's words, she decided that it was probably his doing. Cursing, she approached him to kill the bastard for what he had done. But then a huge worm with a huge number of sharp teeth jumped out of the ground between them. Compared to him, Lan was no bigger than a goosebump. Standing on the dais, Yening ordered Song and Lin to get as far away from here as possible if they could move. Throwing his partner over his shoulder, Lin tried to lead his partner away from the monster. Lin Lan may not know, but level 3 mutants have spiritual intelligence and love to kill strong awakened ones, especially ones like her. Once he corners her and slowly kills her, finishing off her puppies will be a piece of cake, Yening said with a satisfied face. Realizing that she won't have time to dodge the monster's attack because the radius of damage is too large, Lan used the change of positions technique, thereby changing places with her now deceased partner. In this way, she managed to escape certain death. Yening had assumed that her ability to transfer damage to others was limited by range, and she couldn't reach him from there. The huge worm continued to attack. It appeared behind her. Lan noticed this and decided to jump away from him a little without turning her head. Meanwhile, he swung his tail right in front of her face. Without expecting this, the blow hit her right in the stomach, and from the force of the monster, blood gushed from the girl's mouth. For Yaning, this was his chance to finish off this monster, and he took an attack stance. And he used the skill Storm of Swords. The sky turned blue. Lan was surprised what kind of power this was, but then she realized that besides her, there was another awakened third level here. A huge number of swords cut the monster into pieces. The radius of the blast was too large and Lin Lan was trapped. The system sent a message that the Death Factory dungeon had been cleared and would be closed in 5 minutes. Song and Lin's mouths dropped open as Ye Ning took out the 3-level mutant with one blow. But the boy himself did not rejoice so quickly. He felt signs of life. Most likely Lan was still alive. Using the psychic weapon telekinesis, he applied it to the dagger and directed it to where he felt life. Lin Lan was still conscious, but her weakness had already taken over since she had been hit by Ye Ning's attack. The dagger he sent flew straight at her. Noticing him, she was horrified. Could this guy really have done all this on his own? Sensing with his power that she was still alive and most likely had some kind of defense mechanism, the guy decided that he needed to kill her quickly. The dagger was aimed straight at the center of the forehead to inflict a quick death. But he couldn't break through the barrier with it, so he decided to drill it. It should work exactly like that because she was immobilized, and probably wouldn't have interfered with the attack. Already saying goodbye to this world, Lan thanked God that she hadn't been strangled by a toad one day. The barrier was not broken through, and Ye Ning realized that he would have to get his hands dirty, because she was not that weak, even though she did not resist physically. Noticing the guy, she immediately began to question him about whether he was really on the 3rd level. Even after hitting her with his blade, he still couldn't break through the barrier. The girl got angry that he was deliberately humiliating her and screamed and simply asked him to kill her. Standing opposite, the guy realized that she had no idea that he simply couldn't kill her. He decided to play along with this dirty game. In other words, it was important for her to save her reputation, not her life. Lifting her chin, he said that she should have thought of this before when she almost killed all the awakened. He came a little closer and kept saying that he hadn't shown her what real humiliation was. The girl was ready to do anything for a quick death. Ye Ning ordered her to give up all her equipment, items, and every last point, and then he would grant her a quick death. She didn't believe him until Ye Ning grabbed her leg, blushing, but the girl still agreed. The system sent messages about a trade offer from a girl. It turns out she was quite rich. Having given everything, she reminded the guy of her promise. Ye Ning didn't believe that she only had 13,000 points and grabbed her harder, thereby forcing her to give up everything to the last. Lan started screaming that she gave away everything she had, and the guy attacked her, thus scaring her a little. But Lan really had nothing left. He got to his feet and just walked away from her. The girl grinned and began to manipulate words. Since he didn't kill or break through the defense, that means he's a 2nd-level weakling. Getting to her feet, she didn't understand why she had decided that he was a 3rd-level awakened person. Threatening him that she remembered his face, and no matter how far he ran, she would get him from under the ground. He just smirked. By the time she finds him, he'll see who's hunting who else. Meanwhile, the dungeons had already closed, and Ye Ning looked at his rewards, wondering what he would sell and what he would keep. Today, he planned to rent a hotel and practice his blade skill, Shadow Attack. A man appeared on the way in front of him, waving his hand and asking for help. This little man was pointing at the car, and it turned out that it had flipped over and was stuck. Ye Ning looked at it and asked again if the car had been in an accident because it looked too shabby. Turning back to that man, a gang of people with crowbars approached the guy and were about to knock him down. These were ordinary hooligans, petty bandits who made their living by robbing, attacking the weak, and committing robbery for the sake of survival. He quickly dealt with the whole gang. Turning around, I noticed the guy who organized this half-robbery. Ye Ning released his dagger with psychic power, and it hit the thief's leg. He fell and hit his forehead on the ground. He will probably have a concussion. But where there should have been a cut, there was not a drop of blood, as if the body was empty. This man did not look like a mutant or a zombie. At first glance, he seemed almost ordinary, and this was what scared him the most. Turning to Yanning in tears, he begged not to be killed. He would tell him where the best things were. He kept screaming that he was forced to do it, and that he was not with them of his own free will. Yanning held this strange creature tightly and told him to first say what it was. The guy continued not to kill him and said that he would open his status window and Yanning would see everything himself. As it turned out, it was an NPC from the dungeon. He himself did not understand how he managed to get out. After analyzing the guy's status window, Yanning decided to trust him with managing his finances because he had the skills to handle transactions. Yanning handed him a document and said that if he signed it, he would spare his life. He read excerpts from the document, a contract between a master and a servant, the punishment for betrayal, instant death. Yanning hurried the guy to sign faster, otherwise he would kill him now. With tears in his eyes, he shouted that he would sign. From now on, he will always follow Yanning. They are literally teammates now. But Fugui was not happy about this, so Yanning said that he could take all the loot from these bandits. Hearing the phrase, "Take all the spoils for yourself," Lee immediately jumped to the owner's feet and began to thank him. As Fugui's loyalty rapidly increased, Yanning immediately gave orders to sell some items and buy psionic fruits. Already sitting at home, Lee called his master a spendthrift. Some people cannot afford one such fruit in their entire lives, and he eats them like some kind of snack. After these words, Yanning shoved Lee back with his hand and told him to return back to finance. By stuffing himself tightly with these fruits, the guy was able to raise all his statistics to 25. He stood up and decided to start learning a new skill. Blade Attack Rank B, Shadow Attack. The effect stated that this skill could ignore any damage. Yanning went to the skill test in the Lost Battlefield dungeon. There were already 2 people there, and the guy received a message from the system that Yanning might have an advanced stage of the 2nd level. The girl expressed suspicions about the level of the boy, and the brother ordered her to watch her words. Yanning decided to be careful because, judging by the clothes of these 2, they looked like 2nd or even 3rd generation soldiers. The soldier approached him and told him not to pay attention to his sister's words because she had been spoiled a little since childhood. The dungeon notified that this battle would be a special event. Yanning knew that this was one of the 3 components of the apocalypse. The military man said that such events are caused by higher powers, but this dungeon is one of the safest and can be easily left, and the special event constantly repeats a fragment of the war from the very beginning of the apocalypse. Therefore, their enemies are considered to be ordinary zombie hordes and low-level mutants. And then the test began. A huge horde of zombies began to approach them. The military man suggested that they deal with them together, and Chen Yao would stand here and provide support. But Yanning didn't pay any attention to his words and jumped down alone to deal with the mutants. By cutting them, he tested his new skills. The soldier said that they expected nothing less from an awakened advanced 2nd stage. He easily cut through the monsters. The military man himself could summon several spirits of soldiers and increase their advantages. Yanning was surprised. In his past life, he had only heard rumors that some people had such abilities. He warned Yanning in advance that this was a military secret, and that he shouldn't throw this secret around. While he was focused on the monsters in front of him, a huge mutant jumped up from behind and prepared to bite. Noticing him, Yanning threw his dagger with psychic force. He flew right into the monster's jaw and prevented it from attacking the long-haired one. The boy was a little taken aback that E turned out to be a telekinetic and killed a 1st-level monster with 1 blow. The soldier offered Nina a cigarette as a thank you, but he refused. You can't get something like that in the apocalypse. He probably has an impressive past. Longhair agreed. Grandpa is the deputy, and Father leads the 191st District, and both are at level 3, and he himself is gathering his own squad, and immediately invited Yanning to join. But he said that he only works solo. The guy even dropped his cigarette. But he advised not to rush into refusing and said that Yanning would immediately become a colonel and he would pay him 4,000 credits a month, adding that he could get a bunch of blue gear and any placement in safe zones for the family. The sister tried to stop the guy. Yening replied that he was not interested in it. In his mind, he said that he himself would want to become his subordinate when he reached the 3rd level. The guy didn't understand why he refused, because he offered him the most advantageous offer. The sister told him not to pay attention. He's just a brat. Half an hour later, the sister could no longer hold out and suggested calling the spirits of the soldiers and leaving this dungeon. Yening said to hold out a little longer, and if it's really hard, then lure all the monsters to him. He'll figure it out. Now he said that this was enough, and that they should climb the walls immediately. Jumping into the air above the monsters, he activated the flow of light of the heavenly rift. And attacking the monsters with this skill, the blow caught up with the enemies with speed, thereby cutting them into 2 parts. Seeing this, the brother and sister now understood why the guy refused to join their squad. He was much stronger than they thought. After landing, Yening ordered the soldiers to wake up. The girl was surprised. After all, he himself was strong, and they could just wait until the dungeon was closed. Grabbing his sister's hand, the military man said that since Yening said so, he should follow his instructions. Still holding her hand, he raised his weapon to the sky with his other hand and repeated the word Marantz several times. And then a squad of soldiers appeared. One of them immediately began to give orders for them to prepare for battle. The soldier informed the guy that they could just watch, but the soldiers would only last for 1 more wave of zombies before their strength ran out. Yening ordered them to stay where they were, and he went to a place where there was no one. When he killed the level 2 mutant, he didn't find the legendary weapon after him, but now his instincts told him that it was somewhere here. After concentrating a little more, he finally found it. After he noticed this reward, a special task was activated. It is necessary to reveal the origins of the lost battlefield and solve their problem. Yening was surprised by this task, which was also called Last Wish. Probably this task was related to the notebook that was lying with the ball. The boy sat down and began to read the notebook, which turned out to be the diary of a worker who served on the defense line 60 years ago during the first zombie outbreak. On July 17th, the zombies broke through and they asked for support. They also had a new bunch of recruits. The author didn't understand their dialect a little. On July 20th, Ian said he has a girlfriend and she is right behind their troops. This guy is only 17 years old and he is thinking about getting married. On July 24th, the author's troops were unable to stop the zombie horde, and since he is not involved in the fighting, he can count on an early evacuation. On July 25th, the first wave of zombies attacked the safe zone, and the situation became very tense. Ian was dead. They couldn't even find his body. On July 26th, the commander was dead, and the boy couldn't ask him about something. The author was always afraid of death, but was ready to accept it. But this time, no. On July 27th, they were surrounded and had nowhere to go. In the last minutes of their lives, he asked his comrades if they had any last words. To his surprise, all the recruits said only one thing: "Marantz, come home." Looking at the amulet in the form of a flattened ball, Yening needed to fulfill his last wish. "Watching the soldiers fight," my sister said, "what if E doesn't have level 3 and he can only attack so powerfully once?" Brother agreed. This is quite possible. But there is no need to provoke someone who has the 3rd level, and you need to somehow recruit him into your troops. After finishing talking about Yening as if he sensed it, he returned. The soldier reminded him that if level 3 mutants appeared, they would only be able to detain him. Until then, the team would have to leave this place. Yening ignored these words and asked how the battle the soldiers lost ended and what happened to them in general. According to the soldier's grandfather, the battle ended tragically. There were no survivors, but residents of the rear areas were able to successfully evacuate. Ning asked if everything ended tragically. Then how did they manage to stop the zombie horde? The military man said that the horde disappeared on its own. Yening just lowered his head and sarcastically repeated the phrase, "disappeared on its own." But the guys asked what happened and why he suddenly started asking about this whole old story. Yening asked if they knew what Marantz was. They replied that it was a code transmitted throughout the service and a phrase that needed to be shouted out to summon soldiers. Sister said that this phrase is a military secret, and your brother tells you it because he treats you too well, so you shouldn't be arrogant. Turning to him, Ye asked how many times he had used this method. He replied that more than 100 times. With the help of them he usually farmed. Also, they can only be used once per hunt. Yening asked if he was helping these soldiers kill the last mutant. He replied that he was not, because only 2 level 1s come here. Thinking about whether this was the reason for the lost battle, Yening jumped down. The sister was a little indignant. What was he doing? Did he really think of leaving alone? Which of the soldiers called to kill and protect their homes because if they die they will have nothing to protect? Yening was right. Those spirits were the fallen soldiers in the notebook. The military used them all the time and didn't help in any way. It's too cruel. 60 years ago, abandoned by the main forces. They fought to the death to defend their homes, but for so many years they were just numbers. Yening began to fight the zombies and replayed everything in his mind. They said that the zombie horde disappeared on its own, but the soldiers' determination, their unwillingness to surrender has turned them into vengeful spirits trapped here on this battlefield as a special event. They were forever reliving the battle of their lives. Their punishment was to always hold back the zombie hordes. They knew that if they killed a level 3 mutant, their secret phrase would not work, and they would no longer be able to help their descendants benefit from them. Lightning appeared in the sky, and the guy continued to chop down monsters. For soldiers, all this was always a deception and exploitation. The phrase Mrans, which was the hope of their ancestors, was used as a bargaining chip. Yening sympathized so much with these soldiers that if he dies, then this time he will definitely bring them all home. He continued to cut the monsters into pieces, thereby helping the soldiers. The military girl was sure that Yening was definitely crazy if he was seriously going to fight a level 3 mutant. The guy said if he himself is going to fight the mutant, then why did he call the soldiers early and give them less opportunity to fight? Sister said that a level 3 mutant was about to appear, and Yening wouldn't be able to handle it alone, so they had to get out of here. The guy thought that right now this was the safest option, but if they left like this, then his relationship with Ning would become worse than ever. He decided to wait a little longer, just 10 seconds, and if during that time he saw that the guy couldn't handle the boss, then they would leave. Then the earth shook, and they looked in horror in the direction where there was a huge silhouette. This was the very boss that Yening was supposed to fight against. He looked scary. He had spikes instead of fingers. He was very huge and muscular. You can immediately see that this is the 3rd level. Yening looked like a bug compared to him. Spatial slash was the only powerful attack left. He saved this technique for the final blow. But since he didn't yet know the full potential of this attack, the guy didn't know if it was worth the risk. Pointing his sword towards the boss, he decided that he needed to wait until he got closer, and then the blow would hit where it needed to. As the 3-tier mutant slowly approached, Yening silently counted every step, every meter, measuring the perfect moment to strike. And then the boss came close enough and started swinging his hand, and the guy in turn was also aiming to hit. He activated his attack. A spatial cut flashed in the air, barely noticeable but deadly. The next moment the mutant was cut in 2. With the words, "Peace, freeze." He continued to look at the surrounding environment. When everything around him stopped moving, Yening realized that his perception of time was now completely different from everyone else's. But not only that, he noticed that he could see through everything, and now he saw the bones of a frozen mutant. He can also choose what he wants to bring into this space, and can even pass through things like a ghost. Having climbed onto the mutant's head itself, he presented the sword to pierce it. Now the guy understood why the system said that in a spatial rift, he can ignore any protection. Having pierced the monster's head, he also twirled the sword just in case. Yening was invincible in the spatial rift. Taking the sword out of his head, he jumped off it, and in the place where he pierced it, a blue column of force began to emerge into the air. After some time, he actually provoked an explosion. Eventually, the monster fell to the ground, taking several high-rise buildings with it. Standing on the roof, the military could not understand how it happened that such a powerful mutant died in such a short time. The girl put her hand to her mouth and realized that Ning was indeed at the 3rd level and even stronger than her grandfather and father. The guy agreed. They've seen a lot of 3rd-level battles, but never something like this. Maybe he's at the peak of his level. He's literally the hope of the nation. The system notified that the event has ended and that you need to evacuate within 10 seconds because the lost battlefield will disappear forever. Ning returned to the guys, who began to ask what it meant that the field would disappear forever. But he didn't answer. He held the amulet in his hands, turned to face the soldiers, and began to pronounce the word Marantz 3 times. In Zhuang dialect, the soldiers thanked the boy. A soldier came up to him from behind and asked him for what purpose he said that phrase. Ning replied that he would say it later, but now he needed to get ready to leave. Thanks to this battle, Ning reached the peak of the 2nd level, but for some reason he felt uneasy instead of happy. The system sent a notification about whether to continue this mission or to collect the reward for completing the first part. The soldier thanked God for being able to find Ning. They entered the dungeons from the wrong side and were afraid that they would never find the guy again. He also said that he had transferred the rewards for this event, and Ning should have received them by now. Ning himself, of course, thanked him. They decided to invite him to dinner in Zhenjiang, but he said that there was no need for this, and the guy had other things to do, and the help of the military man would not hurt. Longhair agreed. Ning said that he wanted him to help find the soldiers from the lost battlefield at home. He wanted to visit them. Master Chen immediately contacted the lieutenant and ordered him to investigate the information about the soldiers' original homes and send it to him immediately. The information was received, and Ning was already heading to that place, but his sister reminded him of where the lost battlefield had disappeared to. How are they supposed to explain this to Grandpa, who had to pull a lot of strings to get a training field? Master Chen agreed with his sister and said that he would take full responsibility for Ning. He told her to forget that he gave all the points and all the awards to this guy. Continuing to watch the fighter, she said despite the fact that this guy is very strong, he still hasn't shown any interest in them. Is it worth it? And Chen replied that yes, because as long as there are political rivals, they will always try to throw them out of the game. Therefore, it is worth winning Ning's favor. He also asked to collect information, which means that he has no forces in the army. Although he speaks little, he values mutually beneficial relationships, and to win such a person, you need to show real benefit. Sitting in the middle of the fighter, Ning wondered if the soldiers from the Lost Island were flying back to their homes with him now. Arriving in the Zhuang ethnic group, the boy immediately went to some residents to ask about the warriors. Grandma looked at the photo of 5 young guys and remembered her Yan Marantz. 2 people came out to meet him and said that among the residents there were 5 people who remembered something about the soldiers, and they left them supplies. As for the monument, the guy brought the village elder. Ning said that he would give them 4,000 points to build a monument to the soldiers, and let the remaining money be distributed among the children. The elder thanked the guy on behalf of all the residents, and would definitely carve out the names of all the soldiers, but Nin said that there was no need to thank him. On his way home, he looked out the window at the village and wished his ancestors a peaceful sleep, since they were now at home. Thanking them for their blessing, the boy promised to wear the amulet until the very day he completely wins this war. Opening the system, he looked at the reputation rewards. This is something that you can't buy for money. Perhaps this will be useful in his influence in the army. Thinking about military influence, Chen Yun might be a good choice, since he fulfilled all the promises to the guy. After some time, Ning contacted Chen, who was overjoyed. He wanted to borrow 2 blue swords with a preferably short cooldown. Chen agreed, promising to find a way to get them for him, and the boy passed out. Glad that Ning asks him for help again, he probably already trusts him, and maybe his father will be happy when he hears this. Since Ning would gain little from selling the materials, he decided to lay low until the cooldown of his strongest skill ended. When he advances to level 3, he will have a chance to double all of his stats. In his past life, he quickly advanced to level 3, which resulted in low base stats at level 3. This time, it will increase everything to the max level of 31 points. While thinking about his glasses, promotion, and past, he suddenly sensed the aura of a third-level murder. This was bad because his strongest skills were still on cooldown, and if he encountered a level 3, he would definitely die. Walking along the crowded street, Ye Ning wondered who wanted to kill him. This is an inner city of the Zhenjiang safe zone, and no one except Yun knows his true identity. Maybe it is the commander from whom he stole the loot. Or it could be Lan. How could she find him so quickly, considering that all skills are on cooldown? He can't even figure out who is chasing him. Ye Ning decided that the best option would be to pretend that he was not aware that he was being followed and quickly find a place to hide. He found it. It was some kind of bar. And now is the time when people who can go there to drink are considered rich and influential. He finally decided to go there and bluff his way through. Already sitting at the bar counter, he carefully watched everything, and next to him sat a girl with several security guards behind her. While drinking her cocktail, she was a little bored and said that today all the grumpy old men had gathered at the bar. One of the guards leaned over to her and asked if she could go home after finishing her drink, but she just yelled, "Get lost!" and waved her hand. Turning her head, she saw Ye Ning, who was sitting alone and also looking a little bored. The guy also noticed her. She was young, all in a rebellious style. Dyed hair, dramatic makeup. Nin decided that she was going through a rebellious period. Still, to the guy's surprise, she approached him with the words, "Hi, handsome." After taking a closer look at her, Ye Ning realized that her earrings and rings were all blue-level equipment. The 4 guards behind her were all peak stage level 2. She must have an influential position to be able to do this. Coming even closer to the guy, she leaned over and offered to have a drink together. Ning could still sense the aura of a third-level murder outside the building. The guy replied that he would be happy to drink it, but he didn't have any money right now. The girl told the bartender to make 2 cocktails at her expense. She told him that today she would use him to escape from the eyes of her pursuer. Turning back to Ye Ning, she asked if he had the courage to accompany his older sister to the hotel tonight. Since she liked being a hunter so much, the guy was ready to pretend to be her prey for a while. They were already walking arm in arm to the hotel. The guards were discussing among themselves whether they should stop her. But because of the previous scolding, they did not dare. An order was heard from the earpiece. Follow her so that nothing happens. That's all they can do for now. Ye Ning felt that there was a murderous aura coming from behind the guards. He had no choice but to go with the girl to the hotel and see what would happen next. Arriving at the hotel, she immediately fell on the bed. Ye Ning already knew that she was the daughter of the president of the Starlight Trading Company. In his past life, when he was a desperate refugee, he actually worked for the Starlight Company, clearing out zombies. Said out loud that technically her dad was still his boss, but the girl yelled at him not to mention that damn old man because he was horrible. All flushed from alcohol and intoxication, she looked at the guy and kindly asked him to hug her. It is obvious to Ye Ning that she had a fight with her dad, and today she is doing everything to spite him. He decided to scare her a little to get his thoughts in order. The boy pounced on her, throwing them both onto the bed, saying that in that case he wouldn't stand on ceremony with her. Now they were looking each other straight in the eye, and Ye Ning wasn't the least bit embarrassed. Immediately jumping out of the guy's grip, she ran to take a shower. The guy continued to sit on the edge of the bed. Watching this with a smile, he expected it to be so. She herself turned out to be such a funny prey, although she behaved like a huntress all evening. Going out onto the balcony, he thought about how brave she was, but in reality she was so weak and helpless, he doubted that she would come out of the shower soon. The murderous aura was right below, and the figure looked suspicious. Judging by the physique, it was not a woman. Who else besides Lin had a grudge against him? Looking back, even 2 lifetimes later, he still didn't understand why he passed out before the awakening assessment. Lin must still be recovering, but maybe she has connections with other commanders and hired a level 3 to kill the guy. He summoned Fugui and ordered him to get a set of camouflage gear. It had to be incredibly realistic. When they left the room, there were security guards outside and they teased them that they had finished so quickly, but Ning said that she was very drunk and that they should keep an eye on her. While going down in the elevator, he simultaneously equipped himself with camouflage gear. Having turned into some old man, he walked down the street. The third level did not follow him. It seems the disguise worked. He hoped that young Yuqing would take care of himself, and his thoughts shifted to how he could quickly reach the third level. At this time, the girl was reading a letter from Ye Ning. He thanked her for the evening and asked her to be careful. He was not the type to take advantage of someone else's vulnerability. As expected of a well-connected guy, Chen Yun got Ye Ning 2 pieces of blue equipment in the blink of an eye. One was the Blazing Flame longsword, and the other was the Yukon short sword, which was a popular name for the sword of the greatest people. Ye Ning said, "Blazing Flame enchantment," and at that very moment his sword burst into flames of bright red. Flames wrapped around the blade, fluttering in the air. Swinging it in the air, a strip of flame flew into the distance. The temperature of the blade could reach 200 degrees. The weapon itself consumes 270 points per second. Next he tried the Yuchan sword. It consumed 240 points per second, while the sharpness of the blade is comparable to a laser. With Ye Ning's spiritual energy reserves, this would only be enough for a short fight. These 2 swords plus the lightning speed of the Thunderstrike boots, the shield of the Blood Spirit armor, the crippling blade, the fortitude of the ancestral necklace. And with 3 skills on cooldown, he can hardly disguise himself as a level 3 and enter high-level Gates of Hell dungeons. Hell's Gate is an underground dungeon. On each floor, awakened mutants attack. Every 7th floor, a special mutant appears. Among the rewards is a crystal of spiritual energy. If the guy manages to find a large piece, it will be worth more than blue equipment. Ye Ning has already been inside this dungeon, as the success in leveling up to the maximum attribute points depends on conquering this dungeon. There were already several people in the dungeon who were mining spirit crystals. One small specimen costs 8,000 credits. The overseer ordered not to waste time. All the spirit crystals can only fall from monsters. Even if they tear them off, they will not be able to take them with them. Standing among a small number of people, Ye Ning felt that there were 40 awakened people here, and 21 of them were from the army. Wang Yanping was a colonel of the 7th Army Group and a 3rd-level awakened being. They were surrounded by 18 tunnels teeming with zombies. Each tunnel had to have 3 people. They had to act efficiently and maximize their income. When they reach the 7th floor, all the tunnels will converge, where they will all be able to attack the elite monsters together. Wang Yanping responded and said that they have 4 3-tier and 10 peak 2-tier among the military, and he suggested that we team up in pairs and stand behind one of them. This soldier was cunning. He said that if someone wants a level 3 to stand behind him, he must give 70% of the loot, and for level 2 to 50%, he ordered the 3-level and peak 2-level to take a step forward, and the rest to retreat further. Some of the guys said that the deal was good, some that the colonel was asking for too much, some decided to risk their lives in the dungeon. A soldier came out into the middle and introduced himself. He was Yun Ming, a 3rd-level newbie, and only took 50%. He was looking for advanced 2nd-level players to join the team. Ye Ning didn't expect that among the ordinary awakened, there would be a 3rd level, and he was from the most famous civilian organization. Then one of them came out, Huang Kai. He was also a 3rd-level newbie, and took the same percentage. Ye Ning had felt this kind of aura somewhere before. It was something similar to a murderous aura. He gave off a slightly similar aura, and Ye Ning became even more suspicious that this was the person who had been following him for several days. It was too late to change his appearance now. Fortunately, Ning's skill cooldown time was over. He would look for a good opportunity to kill. Later, Lin Lan told Yun that that bastard had a very powerful skill, and he would have to wait for him to use it before making his move. Ye Ning came out. He introduced himself as Ye Ling and a level 3 newbie. He said he takes 40% without any level restrictions. The guys standing opposite were saying that he had no aura and looked pretty ordinary, not like a level 3. Yun Ming said that he didn't believe that the guy had advanced to the 3rd level so quickly, but he replied that pretending in this dungeon was a ticket to certain death. One of the soldiers asked the colonel about Ye Ning's level, but he replied that a normal level 2 would not be able to obtain blue equipment. There was 1 minute left before the start of the dungeon. Everyone immediately gathered in teams of 3 and waited for the start. Ye Ning stood alone. No one chose him because he didn't look impressive and he didn't emit any aura. Yun pointed his finger at the guy and laughed at how funny he was. Who could even believe him? Then he pointed at the others. Now they either follow the second-tier ones, or they are taken by the same loser, Yi Lin. The guys approached the guy and introduced themselves. The girl's name was Li Ke. She is a ranged spellcaster. The guy's name was Zhang Bing. He is an awakened willpower class. Ye Ning decided that they would be on the same team with him, and the guys thanked him. Once the teams have been formed, each group must choose a tunnel and head inside. Approaching the tunnel under number 18, Ye Ning, without asking anyone, decided that they would go to this one and told them to tell about their powers along the way. The girl was a spellcaster and could only use 3 skills, but they were all level 1, so her power might be weak. Zhang was in the willpower class, but he had a spiritual machine gun, so they shouldn't have a problem suppressing the first-level mutants. The guys were a little embarrassed that they were so weak compared to others. Ye Ning tried to support them. He said that they would get out of here alive. During the conversation, the team sensed some movement from behind, and Ye Ning, as captain, ordered them to prepare for battle. 473 zombies were coming out of the tunnel, and 2 of them were level 1. Zhang took out his spiritual machine gun and aimed it at the zombies. Li was surprised how Ning knew how many there were, but he replied that it was probably a level 3 skill. For Ye Ning, the early floors were very easy. He killed monsters like bugs, so he decided to save as much energy as possible. He wanted to try to clear up to the 7th floor by himself, using only basic skills and without using the strongest attacks. Li and Zhen were surprised at how skillfully Ning killed monsters. Zhen guessed that the guy only uses pure combat techniques. In the blink of an eye, the 1st floor was quickly cleared for the guys. They didn't even have time to fight immediately after that. The floor handed out rewards. Even though Zhen and Li were just standing there, they were still awarded points. On the 7th floor, everyone was already waiting for Ye Ling. Yun Ming claimed that he had deceived everyone, which is a 3-level. Yun already knew that Ye Ning wasn't using his strong skills. He wanted to see how the guy could deal with a peak monster without using skills. It didn't take long before the group came out of the tunnel. To clear the 7th floor, they need to kill at least 5 peak mutants in the 2nd level. Then the colonel turned to Nina's group. If they feel ill, they can always ask for help, but they must be ready to share the loot. But they refused after thanking him. Li said that Ye Lin was incredibly strong, but he had difficulties on the 6th floor. Zhen thought that he was just saving his strength. The system notified participants that 8 peak level 2 mutants had been activated. Ye Ning noticed that the monsters were lined up perfectly. He would be able to kill them with 1 skill before the others could even enter the battle. Before each battle, Yun thought that he would come and kill Ye Ning anyway. The guy himself still regretted that he couldn't kill Huang Kai right now, but in order not to accidentally injure the military, he would have to wait. And adding power to the sword, the guy activated a beam of heavenly light, after which he struck the monsters with this powerful attack. Everyone was shocked by the effectiveness of the attack. They did not expect such power from the guy. Even an average 3-leveler cannot take out all the creatures with 1 blow. Ye Ning's group was also shocked. Zhen was right. The guy had been holding back his strength all this time. This loot should be worth around 50,000 credits. Killing a peak level 2 gave Ye Ning 680 dong crystals. Hugging her brother, Li asked him to tell her that this was not a dream, and that they would now be able to pay for their mother's treatment. The colonel approached him and expressed surprise that the guy seriously hid his strength from them, but Ning said that it was just an accident. Yun immediately joined in, saying that he destroyed everything, leaving nothing for others. For everyone there is such a concept as fair play. Ning knew that Huang was deliberately trying to stir up trouble. He was probably using the army to test the guy. The old man was sure that his trump card was spent, and now he felt insecure, but he decided not to stop and press his buttons again. Ning began to calm the military, saying that they could still activate monsters in this area, and he promised that he would not interfere. Pointing his finger at Ning, Huan continued to escalate the situation. How dare this guy talk down to them? The colonel intervened and silenced the old man. He said it was good to have a strong ally, plus it would be possible to activate the second wave. Huan said that if they don't get compensation for the last wave, Lin will have to take on another second-tier mutant. The colonel wanted to observe the boy's fighting style for himself and therefore asked him again whether he had any objections to Huan's proposal. Ning replied that he didn't mind. At the same time, realizing that Huang had failed to turn the team against him, he decided to use a mutant. The guy decided to rely on his combat skills and equipment enchantments. Killing one monster shouldn't be difficult. A large-scale mutant of the defensive type stood before him. The optimal strategy now was to hit and run until he wore the mutant down. Things weren't going well because the guy's power output was still too low. One hit barely penetrated the Lego defense, and there's no talk of real damage. Looking askance at the boy, Huan thought, without his skills, he is worthless. As soon as he copes with the beast, Lin will be next. The mutant stood in place and growled, then attacked, then stood again. Holding both blades in his hands, the guy activated them and jumped up to finally deal at least some damage. He cut the crocodile's leg with Yu Chan's sword. The skin turned out to be thick. Even with the enchanted blue equipment, he could not break the crocodile's leg with one blow. But still, this creature was in pain from the attack. In response, he swung his spiky tail right in front of Ning's face. Thinking quickly, he blocked the blow with two swords. The green creature swung its tail even harder, causing the boy to fly back a little, but he still managed to stay on his feet. Li and Zhen were scared for their partner. He was in real trouble without using his strong attacks. Without thinking twice, Zhen took out his spirit machine gun and began shooting at the crocodile, allowing Ning to deal normal damage. Li also decided not to stand aside, but to help with her albeit weak attacks, but still, she used the skill Ice Spikes. The two attacked the monster together, and they managed not so much to cause damage as to distract it. The mutant, noticing these two, immediately rushed to attack them. They realized that their skills had no effect on him, and frightened, were ready to accept death. Taking advantage of the moment, Ning dealt damage directly to the mutant's face and ordered his partners to retreat. Although he couldn't kill it in one hit after enchanting it, the damage is definitely much higher than before. The guy continued to stick to the early technique, hit and run until the monster was wound up. He quickly attacked the mutant from different sides. Other units were fighting the second wave. The colonel had already finished off one of the zombies. For him, it wasn't that difficult. Huan didn't lag behind either. He killed and killed. The old man wanted to take away a decent amount of money from the dungeon. All the three-tiered ones had already destroyed their targets, but Ning was still stuck in this tough battle. Zhen said that Lord Ning's fighting style is shitty. He managed to destroy 8 monsters in one go. Why is he taking so long to fight it? Even the 2-level ones had accomplished their goals and were now lined up and peering into Ning's battle with the green mutant. The colonel wondered why his level was so low. If it weren't for the blue gear, the guy would have been at the peak of level 2 at most. Now that everyone is finished, Huang Kai will most likely try to make his move. Ning needs to be on guard. Pretending that Huan was trying to help the guy, he approached the battle site. None of the observers suspected anything. Ning noticed the old man out of the corner of his eye. He wanted to kill the boy and take the monster kill as a bonus. But the boy wasn't going to give up his loot so easily. He activated the full enchantment and applied power to his thunderclap boots to make a lightning dash. and at that moment, the monster was knocked to the ground, and Ye Ning was sitting on it and had already raised 2 swords for the final kill. Using the flames and the power of the Yukon sword, a blow to the insides, the boy drove 2 swords straight through the beast's face. And while he was focused on the monster, Huan had already jumped on top of him and was ready to strike. But Ye Ning was counting on this. Right before the old man struck, he activated the protection of the soul blood armor, and a red dome enveloped the guy's entire body. Then he used the crippling blade, the leg armor, and hit the barrier from the inside, and it started shaking. Because of this, Huang fell, and Ye Ning continued to finish off the monster so that the old man would not have time to come to his senses and take the bonuses for the kill for himself. The colonel looked at Huang mockingly and said that it seemed like Ye Ning still needed his help. He just glared at the boy with displeasure. Huang noticed that Ye Ning was wearing Lan equipment, but it was so powerful that his spiritual energy would not be able to withstand the strain. Ye Ning noticed that the old man seemed to be looking for an excuse to attack him. The colonel grabbed him by the shoulder and told him not to be so greedy, but the old man asked the colonel to move away. It was his personal business with Nin. While putting the swords back into their sheaths, Ye Ning said that he had no idea what he was talking about, but since it was personal, he suggested moving to the 14th floor and resolving their differences there, so as not to waste the others' time. The old man was a little surprised. Did he really not plan to just leave here? But he's definitely already used up his best moves. Relying on equipment to get through the next round is tantamount to suicide. Ye Ning calmed Huan down and said that he was not going to go anywhere until the 14th floor, and the old man himself agreed to resolve everything on that floor. The colonel was already tired of waiting, and he ordered everyone to choose a tunnel and move to the next floor. From the 8th floor, Huan is being chased by clawed creatures. They appear out of nowhere and attack, so he asked his partners not to go far and not to blame him for his death. As a long hand with 4 claws crawled out of the black hole, the guys called out to Huan. But he continued to run without looking back. The guys tried to speed up a little, but the mutant's paw caught up with them. And in the end, she caught up with him. She tore one of her partner's arm into 2 pieces. And then she changed course to another guy. But Huan stood between the clawed paw and the guy with his shield, thus preventing another soldier from being maimed. The old man's hammer also came into play, and the paw retreated a little. But another one appeared from behind. One of the guys shouted to Huan, "Behind!" and he turned in that direction. The claws were a millimeter away from leaving an eye. Somehow he still managed to dodge it. The guy who remained intact used spiritual bullets and drove these creatures away from the commander a little. Angry that Huan almost lost his eye, he decided that his share would now be 90% instead of 70%. Asking his partners what they could do now other than rely on him, they protested. For them it was a complete betrayal. Waving his hammer in their direction, he ordered the boys to choose what was more important to them, their own skins or some money. Huan turned and continued moving down the tunnel, saying that if they had no objections, then let them follow him. Despite the unfairness of the situation, they decided to follow the captain. Turning his head to look at the guys, the old man saw nothing but thick darkness. For the other team, this floor was a piece of cake, and the next floor was right in front of them. They only had 2. Then one of the guys got hit on the head with something long. Raising their heads in the direction from which the attack had come, they noticed a zombie, a ray. Ye Ning's team moved along the 18th tunnel and onto the 12th floor. He himself ran ahead and commanded where to turn. There were screams in the nearby tunnels, but it was too quiet here. Zhen agreed with his sister. Compared to the first 7 floors, this was a walk. It could be that there are simply fewer monsters in their tunnel. Brother said that Ning has a special gift, sensing their presence and therefore holds on further. When the commander suddenly stopped, his partners asked in confusion what had happened. At 97 degrees directly in front of them, a ghoul has attached itself and they can go around it. In the second tunnel on the left, 16 meters away, there is a blood eater hiding. And to the right underground was a bone eater heading straight towards them. Zhen was surprised. Ning didn't feel them. He saw right through everything. The sister was even more surprised. Did such an ability really exist? Ning commanded that he would go first and kill him, let them go in 3 seconds, then he would distract the Bone Eater, and they would meet in 30 seconds. Using the enchantment of the dual swords, 2 bright colors flashed right in front of the mutant. Ning killed every monster and tried to distract them as much as possible so that his partners could survive and continue on their way with him. Already at the meeting place on the 14th floor, the ladies approached the colonel. He asked where the leaders of their teams were. One of them replied that they were all dead. Who would have thought that fighting low-level monsters is more dangerous than high-level ones? This was bad because the management wants a lot of spirit crystals, but it looks like they won't get them. They'll probably have to buy from others. A rather beaten Huang Kai managed to reach the 14th floor, and his partners were with him. He cursed this dungeon and these long-legged and clawed creatures, cursing a little. Now they were all waiting for Ning. If his team joined, they would have more people, but his fighting ability was questionable for the colonel. Huan immediately got down to business. He began to slander the guy in every possible way, saying that he had put on a lot of equipment and was all so cool. He seriously doubted that they survived, and pointing his finger at the scar on his face, he was ready to bet anything, even his face. But then footsteps were heard, and Ning came out of the tunnel with his squad, saying that he would soon lose his ugly face. Huan was surprised how they remained not only alive but also not even wounded. Another man approached them and asked how this was possible. They were definitely supposed to be attacked. Li replied that Lord Yelin had led them away from most of the monsters, while Jen asked why they looked so exhausted. Hadn't they managed to escape? Some of the guys just stood there and couldn't get anything out of themselves. Ning turned to Huang and brought his sword to his face and asked who it was who was willing to bet his face that their group would die out. Huan said that the guy had definitely been in this dungeon many times, and remembering the route was cheating. The colonel replied that this was impossible because every time you enter the hellish dungeon, the landscape changes completely. Taking a closer look, the colonel was sure that the guy definitely had some abilities and that he would be very useful for the army. Huang realized that this was not cheating, which meant that Ning's strength was not what Lin Lan had said. He decided to wait for the mutants and test him again. Since they were on the 14th floor, and by agreement they were supposed to sort things out here, Ning decided to challenge the old man, saying that he was afraid. But the colonel came forward and said that now they would be fighting 3rd-level mutants, and first they needed to think about the common cause. Ning agreed. He continued to say that there were 2 level 3 mutants living here. The military would take on one, the rest would fight the other together. Huan disagreed with this division because the military had 4 fighters at level 3 and 6 fighters at the peak of level 2. And in their group, there are only 3 fighters of the 3rd level, and one of them may be a fake. And out of 5 fighters of the 2nd level, 2 of them are scum. The colonel stood up for Ning. This fake was able to kill 8 monsters with 1 blow, and if they can't cope, they can send reinforcements. Ning told the colonel that everything was fine, but if they needed help, they should call right away. Huan concluded that if the guy was so confident in his abilities, then he definitely had some aces up his sleeve. Having sorted out the division of the fighters, and still not having changed anything, the colonel gave the order to begin. It was 2 grave worms. As soon as they appeared, 2 squads immediately began to attack. The worm was striking rapidly, but did not have time to think, and somehow make a counterattack. Ning looked back to see how things were going for the 2nd squad. Huan tried to block the blows and generally somehow withstand them. Noticing that Ning was not fighting at all, but was just standing there, he called out to him and asked why he was not moving. He was already approaching the monster and activated the double enchantment of the sword on the way. He activated the energy battle axe and hit the monster right on the head with it. Ning moved at high speed and swung his 2 swords in long arcs, managing to confuse the monster a little. But the toothy one quickly recovered and began to attack in response. Nin, without wasting a second, activated the boots with electric spikes. While shouting at Huang to move away, he stepped on his head. He cursed and shouted after the guy that he probably wanted to die. Huang was momentarily distracted by Ye Ning, and the monster immediately approached his face. Noticing him, he immediately realized that the monster would attack and put up his shield, getting ahead of the toothy one. Having rested and swung his tentacle again, the monster tried to somehow cause damage to the old man. But he continued to stand on his feet and put up shields. And then the monster's strength exceeded what it had been before, and the guy fell to the ground. Ye Ning pretended to be worried about Huang, but inside he was definitely gloating. The two squads continued to fight against these two creatures. One of the squad offered protection to Huang. Those two are still 200 meters away. If they approach 100 meters, Ye Ning will be able to kill them at the same time. Huang shouted at Ye Ning that he needed to focus on the monsters first, since he couldn't hold them all off by himself. Ye Ning ordered all the second-level fighters to focus on helping Yun Ming. Ye Ning himself was with Huang, and together they distracted the centipede and were already running away from it. Turning around, the old man didn't know how to deal with the monster without support. But Ning said, "If he holds on for 3 seconds, he will kill the monster." Huang decided to trust Ye Ning, and after he killed the monster, the old man was going to talk to him again. Covering the boy's back, the old man stood holding a shield and took all the attacks. But there were still 50 meters left for Ye Ning to use his attack. The mutant continued to press his power on the old man's shield, and was soon able to break it. Leading the mutant and heading towards the second one, Ye Ning asked Colonel Wang to be careful. They couldn't hold him back any longer. The colonel was very slow in thinking, and besides, while he was turning around, the monster simply sent him into the sky with one blow. Taking an attacking stance, the boy ordered everyone to retreat because he was going to use a powerful attack and did not want to hurt anyone. He decided that he would first deceive them, and then come even closer, it would be more reliable, and point 2 swords towards the mutants. He released beams of light from 2 swords, and they barely touched the monsters. The colonel and Huang realized that this wasn't the attack he used to kill monsters before. It wasn't even some kind of super-duper attack. Once the 2 grave worms were close enough, Ye Ning crouched slightly and activated the sword storm skill. Those who stood closer to the battle simply flew away from the power of the guy's attacks. The colonel managed to hold out. He already understood that Ye Ning, thanks to his strength, could wipe them all into dust with one swing of his sword, and no one would have time to squeak. He looked at the guy and realized that he was not a simple 3-level. Most likely he had the highest stage of the 3rd level. Somewhere on the battlefield, Ye Ning found Huang fallen. The boy asked him to dodge, but he probably didn't listen. Ye Ning held the old man's hammer and shield in his hands and promised him that if he really died, he would take care of all his equipment. The system notified that the round was cleared and the reward will be calculated based on the contribution of each participant. The colonel intended to refuse Ye Ning to continue clearing this dungeon since mid-stage 3rd-level mutants would start appearing. The young man, realizing that the only trump card he had left was dimensional dissection, decided to agree with the colonel's proposal. Before leaving the dungeon, the colonel said that the army was ready to buy the crystals from them at a price higher than the market price, 11 per piece. Many people were delighted with this offer, including Zhang, and decided to make a deal. Those who agreed could come and trade with the army, and then leave the dungeon. Ye Ning had a lot of crystals, and the colonel asked why he didn't exchange them. But Ye Ning first wanted to know why the army needed so many crystals. They are needed to increase the level of low-level awakened. They bought all the crystals on the market, but it was still not enough consumption, and their effectiveness are not proportional for awakened ones, and to reach the highest stage of the 2nd level, millions of credits are needed. Ye Ning continued to analyze, was the army really spending so much on just this awakened project? He had 27,000, and a little cunningly, he suggested that the colonel round up to 300,000 credits for all the crystals. He said that he would have rounded it up anyway and asked if the guy would agree to clear this dungeon a few more times. But he refused, since entering the dungeon multiple times with the same people leads to a decrease in the rewards earned. The colonel replied that if they did so, they could attract the attention of General Tang, and that they were collecting all these crystals for his second son. He has great potential, and will soon be able to become a full-fledged awakened level 3, and he can break through the barrier of the 4th class. Yaning immediately ordered them to shut up and leave immediately after finishing trading. The colonel did not understand why the guy reacted so sharply to his answer. The guy's own income seemed insignificant to him compared to what the army invests in its projects and people. Using the power of such a project will not provide a stable result for soldiers. They will not be sufficiently prepared in a real dungeon. Previously, the guy thought that in his past life he had everything, but he was empty, and what seemed significant then now became unimportant. At the moment, he uses the most resources of anyone on the 3rd sequence. It was funny, now he must increase the attributes to the maximum and take part in the 3rd level test. When this happens, he will be able to enter the 1st sequence, and only then will he have enough strength to change the current situation. The higher his attributes were, the more spiritual fruits he needed to eat to increase them. Yaning began to eat the fruit, biting into each piece with great enthusiasm. And now he was already full and almost at 30 points, but there was one last piece of fruit left that needed to be eaten. After finishing the last fruit, a window with a gotcha appeared in front of him. He could use it once when all attributes were at maximum level. Hoping to pull out one epic gear set, he pressed the button to begin. The wheel started spinning. The guy started thinking about what kind of weapons he would like, then his strength could double. He got a lucky ring. It was from an epic gear. After examining it carefully, the guy decided that the gift was not bad. Perhaps it was somehow connected with willpower. In the system, Yaning saw that it could store 1,000,000 cubic meters, which meant that he could take hundreds of warheads with him anywhere. Continuing to study the characteristic, he noticed the transformation of willpower. That is, the guy could make the desired attribute from willpower during the fight. A little later it turned out that there is a level 5. Maybe this is the limit of a human being, or there may be mutants of level 5, except for the 4th. The system notified that the ring belonged to the world of luck, but the guy had never heard of this world. Maybe there are mutants of level 5 there. Having come to the conclusion that the ring may be connected to a mysterious future, the guy can't sell it. Summoning Fugui, he ordered him to sell the golden shield, hammer, and all other enhancement items, and buy spiritual fruits with the credits he earned. The system reported that ordinary fruits have limitations, and to overcome them, high-grade fruits are needed. E immediately ordered to buy them. The zombie horde was supposed to come in 2 days, and by that time the guy's highest skills should have been updated. He decided that he would raise the level of all attributes to the maximum, and when the horde came, he would be able to intimidate everyone and then take part in the test. His thoughts were then interrupted by Fugui, who appeared with the news that he could not find high-level fruits anywhere. But he was able to find out that they were all bought by the army. Yaning thought that maybe he should contact Chen Yong. Perhaps Chen has telepathic abilities, because as soon as Yaning thought of him, he immediately called him. A supernatural dungeon was discovered, and the guy offered Yaning to help clear it out. The guy was surprised and asked if this dungeon had just formed, and if it was Class A. Chen replied that it was not fully formed, so now was the right time to infiltrate. If there was a problem, they could leave it. There were also no missions in this dungeon, and only one entity was currently active. If E agrees, then the commander will pay him 10,000, and if everything goes well, then in addition to 70% of the dungeon, he will receive 30,000 credits. The guy was a little surprised by the commander's generosity. He assumed that they wanted to create a walkthrough guide for a future business. And he was right. In order for Yaning to definitely agree to participate in clearing the dungeon, Cheng was ready to accept the guy's conditions, and he said he would expect another 20% of future business profits and high-quality spiritual fruits. While driving to Hebei village, the guy was thinking about the zombie outbreak. His skill was still on cooldown, so he decided to clear the dungeons without physical skills. The guys were already there and got out of the car to discuss everything with the local awakened people of this village. The first to greet was the son of the vice president of Tiancheng Trading Group, Wang Zheng, who was honored to meet Yanning. He also assigned Fan He. He was a hunter of the agility class and mental class. Fan interrupted the praises and shouted that he was just level 2, and he said that when it comes to dungeons, he is a true king, and turning to Yanning, he said that it does not reach his souls. Zheng immediately intervened, saying that Fan was just a straightforward person and had experience in clearing supernatural dungeons. Now that they've finished their greetings, why don't they go inside and take a look? Yanning agreed. Walking along the road, Fan told the boy to listen to his orders. As soon as they entered inside, they should follow the instructions from his system. And he added that he shouldn't relax because of his 3rd level, and shouldn't think that everything will be easy, and that he shouldn't blame him for his death. Yanning was surprised. What kind of system instruction? Is this dungeon still being formed? Isn't there any system missions? But it was Fan's ability that helped him get additional information from the system about what was happening. Yanning realized that this was a rare talent that gave the guy an advantage because he knew in advance what was coming his way. This place was by the river. The residents sold water to the safe zone and earned money that way, but the guys noticed that the wheels of their rickshaws were rusty. This meant that they had not been in the safe zone for a long time. Didn't they realize that they needed to sell water? It looked like they were stuck in an endless loop, continuing to take water from the river and fill the full jug with it. A guy in a clean shirt and pants came out to them. He didn't look like a local and asked where they were from. They replied that they were from the army of the Zhenjiang safe zone. People told them about water pollution in their area. The guy with disgust on his face said that he knew it. That woman drowned in the river would kill them all. Yanning immediately began to ask if the river was really polluted, but he only began to make excuses, saying that it was all guesswork. But Yanning said that if he didn't explain everything now, they would be forced to detain the resident. Frightened, he said that Zhang's death had nothing to do with them. She stole something and jumped into the river. Then there was a heavy rain. Yanning and Zheng continued to ask if she ducked because someone forced her to do so. He only retreated little by little. The commander, noticing this, asked if he had nothing to do with death, then why was he retreating? He touched the resident and felt the coldness of his hands. Perhaps he spent a lot of time in the water. If everything is confirmed, there may be bad consequences. Van looked over his shoulder and replied that the guy had decided everything too quickly. Suddenly, Yanning asked the family of the deceased. If they didn't find anything related to him, then they wouldn't cause any trouble. A little distrustfully, but the resident nevertheless agreed. He led them to an abandoned house where the mother and daughter of the deceased remained. Her house was too cold, and so the resident stopped near the entrance. The group was freezing cold right down to their bones. There was clearly something wrong with this house. They walked a little deeper and noticed a large number of jugs of water and stains from it. And then right in front of them an old woman jumped out of the jug. They gasped in surprise and stepped back a little. Fan urged not to worry, as apparently she was affected by the atmosphere of the dungeon, but she did not completely go into a spiritual state. She climbed out of the jug and, looking at the whole squad, asked who they were. Yanning replied that they were here to investigate the drowning of her daughter. Perhaps someone forced her to do it. She stared into space and repeated the same phrase. "My daughter is in the water. You have to help me find her." Zheng noticed that the old woman was completely lost, and it was impossible to extract information from her. But Yanning did not give up. She replied that her daughter was taking water from the river and would return late at night. Fan didn't get any clues from the system because he wasn't near the key clues. He thought her daughter was the key to this. The commander suggested that perhaps they should go to the river and find her, but Fan was categorically against it. When asked why, he replied that there was no need to rush. It was better to wait until it became crowded. This guy seems to be hiding something. Drowning. Mother. These people are taking water from the water to find her body. Squad about it. Yanning introduced himself and said that they were a military intelligence team from the Zhenjiang safe zone. Someone had informed them that her mother had gone missing. The little girl started screaming that she was not missing, but that she was brutally killed by the villagers. They slandered her and brought her to death. The guy asked her if she knew who was responsible for her mother's death, and if they could help catch them. She handed over a piece of paper with their names. E said that he would first find her mother and then interrogate these people from the list. The little girl said that her mother was already home and he could go and catch them right away. Yening thought that her forehead had been washed away by the river into the water. How could she be home? The girl looked at him intently and asked if he really doubted her words. He had just promised to find them. The guy replied that they were drawing up the necessary documents to arrest them and that they would be detained tomorrow morning. The little girl's eye lit up strangely, and she promised that if Ye Ning lied, he would kill them all for it. Everyone was horrified by what they heard. Could this girl really be capable of such a thing? Fan suggested that they stay inside this house tonight, let Chen and Wang sleep together while the others undressed. They agreed, but Ye Ning asked why they were separated like this. He replied that the ghost chooses either the strongest or the weakest to attack. They need to fight one time to get a hint. The boy jokingly asked if they had accidentally hired him as bait. Chen immediately protested, saying that he was mistaken. Since E will receive payment for this, he agreed, he will do his job. Fan looked at him sideways and replied, "Let's see what he says tomorrow, if of course he lives until the morning." According to the existing clues, Zhang was killed by the villagers and turned into a ghost, and they will do two things to settle the event. First, they need to find Zhang's corpse. Second, they need to help them take revenge. After they find the corpse, they will catch these people and leave them to the girl. Li Yanning asked incredulously, "Isn't this too easy?" It doesn't seem like the difficulty of an A-class dungeon. Fan started shouting that they all forgot that the dungeon was still being formed. It could have been much worse and more difficult if they had come later. Chong and Wang were shocked, but they calmly exhaled, saying how good it was that they came here much earlier. Although Fang He's suggestion made sense, Yanning still felt that something was wrong. He hid something important from him by the river, and then even suggested looking for a body there. In addition to the desire to reproach, his words contained a threat to Yanning's life. There are undoubtedly financial motives behind this. Today, Fan goes to Li's house alone, maybe for something valuable, and if Ye survives, Fan won't have time to get it. It was much clearer that way. Speaking of the girl Li Ru, her expression says more than just upset. And there's also this liquid in the bucket. Even if such a young girl is thirsty for revenge, she's unlikely to be capable of murder. His train of thought was interrupted by a strange, persistent knock from above. Ye Ning jumped up from his bed and shouted, "Who's there?" But there was no answer, and the knocking continued. This something continued to hide, and he concentrated all his psychic energy and ordered it to appear. And the ghost of the girl, Zhang Shui, appeared above. Her eyes were red as blood, and instead of nails, she had claws. Quickly realizing, he took out the beads of envy that he received in the last supernatural dungeon. They found their use. He directed these beads towards the ghost, activating his psychic power once again. With this power, Yanning formed a sword and swung it at the ghost. Her eyes lit up bright red, and she bared her teeth as she looked at the guy. After which she quickly jumped out through the open door and began to run away from that place. Yanning immediately followed her, kicking the half-open door in the hopes of catching up with her. Having run out into the yard, he no longer noticed her. The ghost of Zhang Shui managed to fly away. The squad immediately came running to the screams and began to ask what happened. Ye answered that a ghost appeared to him, and perhaps Chen Fan and Fan He died together. The boys were shocked by this conclusion. Perhaps the ghost became stronger after they entered the dungeon. Yanning suggested that they leave this building as it had become very dangerous, and he would continue his investigation here. The commander hesitated a little, but Yanning reassured him, saying that he still had an item with him that could save his life. In the end, the commander agreed with the guy and headed towards the exit of the dungeon together with the squad. The bead of envy can only protect Yanning once. He decided to be careful and expand his mental perception, and he noticed that Chen Fan was only left with one leg, and some time must have passed from the time he screamed to the time he was eaten. Then the ghost couldn't kill Fang He at the same time. His body hadn't been eaten yet. Maybe there was more than one ghost here. Yaning noticed the shovel. Was he trying to dig something and then he was attacked? Ning thought that the clue might be underground. He penetrated the ground with his perception and saw the corpse of a ghost in a white shirt. She had 6 fingers and this mutation was hereditary, but Li Ru did not have it. So this ghost is not Zhang Shui. And then the ghost noticed the guy. Her eyes were extraordinary. Maybe she was the blue-class item that Fang He was trying to obtain. Yaning decided not to waste time and use the beads of envy. A large flow of energy was released and surrounded her, then tried to somehow capture her. With her claws, she scratched out space for herself, destroying the power that Yaning had released from the beads. Her true body was stronger than the spiritual one. Now she began to attack, continuing to swing her claws. The ghost rushed at the guy, and the bead's ultimate ability was activated. Yaning managed to dodge by jumping away. A strong blow hit the ground. From the force of the blow, some pieces flew into the air. Having activated the lightning boots, the boy began to run away in a zigzag pattern. The boy crossed the barrier, and she was unable to continue pursuing the boy. The corpse of the woman in white is not Zhang, which means her body could still be downstream. Maybe she is even still alive. The squad couldn't contact Yaning due to the barrier's interference, so the boys decided to go look for him inside the barrier and further downstream. But they could not find any sign that he was there, and even in Li Ru's house there was nothing. The guys thought he was missing, but how was that even possible? And then Li Ru appeared. It was already morning, and they still couldn't find the promised killers. The girl asked why they still weren't doing anything. They were a little surprised by Ro's tone and said that they were about to leave. She ordered to take all those caught to the river. She will torture them there. The guy finally suggested going to help her get revenge. It was their only clue, and there was no other way out. Kneeling and bound in front of Li Ru, they shouted that she had died of her own free will and that they had been wronged. Despite all their excuses, she continued to blame these guys for her mother's death, and while saying this, she raised the scissors up a little, and she thrust them straight into the man's chest. There was not a drop of compassion on the girl's face, only coldness and indifference. Then she put her hand in the guy's mouth and pulled out her tongue. After that, she cut it off and turned to the other guys asking, "Who's next?" The guys started asking for forgiveness and begging for mercy. There was no expression on their faces, only worries about their lives. Since the second one was spreading rumors about her mother, after she refused him, the girl decided to finish him off too. The captain was puzzled as to how a 10-year-old girl could do such a thing, while the other prayed that it would all end as soon as she finished killing. After these words, she turned to them with a request to throw them into the river while they were alive. They hesitated a bit, but eventually agreed. They threw them into the river, and the bodies instantly floated up. The captain at this time offered to help with the search for the mother. Li Ru replied that they had nothing to worry about anymore because her mother was here now, and she said that they all had to die too. And then the same ghost appeared, the girl who had recently been haunting Yaning. She immediately began to attack the guys, who ran wherever their eyes looked. Using a certain suction skill, she lifted the boys up with her power and pulled them closer to her mouth. From one of their squads, only the legs from her mouth were visible. The next one on the way was the captain. He put a knife to his neck and said that he would rather commit suicide than die such a horrible and painful death. And then somehow this small dagger was snatched from Yun's hand. He opened his eyes and saw Yaning standing nearby with her hand outstretched. Using his power, he attacked the monster and it flew back several meters. The boys landed behind Yaning, thanking him for saving them. Yaning shouted to Li Ru to see who the woman was holding in her arms. The girl looked in that direction and saw her mother. She was alive. Tears rolled down Li's cheeks. She continued to hold the baby's lifeless body, and both ran closer to each other. Li Ru realized dangerous here. And while they were busy with this question, a ghost appeared and began to pull Li Ru's mother. Now she was almost at her mouth. The girl did not want to lose her mother again and rushed to her physical body. As a result, another ghost appeared in the air, but this time it was the girl herself. Li Ru finally came to her senses. The guys from the squad could relax a little. They were safer holding Zhang Shui in its mouth. The ghost called out the girl's name as if it could recognize her. Li Ru was able to attack the ghost woman's neck with her claws, after which she grabbed that spot with her teeth and began to bite it. That day, Zhang fell into the water and was rescued downstream. Li was looking for her mother and unknowingly turned into a ghost and began to influence the residents. After a girl found a woman's body in a river, she decided it was her mother, and the solution was to make them understand the truth and kill each other. It turns out that the villagers they caught earlier were not guilty. After the ghost battle, Yanning received the Ghost Eye. It was a blue class item. The effect was to receive hints and information. This effect was similar to Fang He's ability. Ye guessed that it could enhance his ability, so he risked his life to obtain it. The 10,000 credits that were supposed to be Fang He were decided to be given to Yanning as gratitude, and the commander also personally thanked him. Yanning was happy with this amount of money, although he didn't show it. But there was a more important matter: to obtain a high-grade spiritual fruit. The boy asked the guys if they had found this fruit, but they replied that they were currently unable to provide it to him, because all the high-quality fruits were bought by the military, and they are said to be used for a seed project. Yanning decided to take action himself to get the fruit. He also invited the boys and their parents to watch a great show tonight. They repeated the word show together in confusion and waited for the guy to explain. It was a show about a zombie outbreak. Zhang arrived at the 119th safe area. He asked the vice commander why his father had not arrived. Ning Yuan said that he had urgent matters to attend to, so he asked him to go to Tianfeng in place of his father. Since he could make decisions on behalf of his father, Yanning should not object. Zhang suggested meeting Wang and then flying to Tianfeng. Meanwhile, at the Tiancheng Chamber of Commerce headquarters, Wang had already received a slap from his father. He, in a bit of shock and not understanding what was happening, asked his father what he was up to. The vice president was already yelling at his son. How dare he touch a batch of energy fruits? He noticed it in time. Otherwise, everyone would have gotten into trouble. Yanning saved the guy's life, and he didn't keep his promise, and the military district had already ordered a lot of fruit. A few boxes won't change the situation. In a calm tone, the father explained to Van that there was also a president above him, so he was not the only one making decisions. And even if he didn't exist, they couldn't possibly offend the military for the sake of pleasing the unknown Yanning. Yanning is just a mercenary that the guy hired for protection, and besides, they will postpone the issue with the fruits for some time. Chen Yong and his company arrived. The father decided that he would first accompany his son to Tianfeng, and there they would talk to Yanning. If he really is as powerful as Wang said, then Tian will reconsider the issue of energy fruits. A week ago, Commander Xiao received a message from Yanning about a zombie attack. Although he did not believe it, he still took some measures. The commander's right-hand man ran into his office and reported that first- and second-level zombies had appeared in the old city. Could Yanning really be right? Xiao shouted in some shock and gave the order to activate the general alarm and go on. The defensive residents were advised to evacuate to the rear of a safe area as soon as possible. The soldiers were ordered to place mines every 15 meters. They needed to break through the horde with an explosion so that the awakened could penetrate inside and attack. Other units filled the trenches with incendiary liquid. Fighter jets flew in the sky, monitoring the order in the city and the activity of zombies. Yanning and his assistant stood on the roof of one of the buildings. Despite all the careful preparations, Tianfeng City would be difficult to defend. All these traps were designed for zombies and they could only slow them down, but for mutated creatures, these traps are easy to avoid. There are 2,000 awakened in this area. 1,000 of them on guard, 600 on the front line, and only 200 on long-range duty. The deployment is suicidal. The financial assistant was a little scared since the owner says so. It means they will all die. But Yaning calmed the guy down a bit and said that this time they have him. And then it was announced that the vanguard of the zombie horde had already broken through the line of defense, and all troops were ordered to prepare for battle. The squad attacked the zombies with spiritual energy-powered combat mechanisms. One of the fighters was attacked by mutated scavenger birds and was able to destroy the ship. The long-range squads were ordered to concentrate fire. The zombie hordes continued to advance and were already running across the minefield, exploding, but did not stop. The field was cleared of mines by normal zombies. Yaning asked the fire support squad to hold off the horde here. Ning Yuan asked where he went. The horde had already arrived, but he was not there. Apparently, he was waiting for high-level mutants. Otherwise, why was he showing off? President Wang said that God forbid things would turn out so that the third-level mutants would fight them, the second-level ones. With a smirk on his face, Jan said that he thought so too, because Yaning said that he wanted to surprise him, probably make him laugh until he cried. Commander Yun asked not to mock Yaning as the commander himself and Wang respect him very much. Uncle Zhang took him by the shoulder and said that he believed in his choice, and when Yaning wanted to talk, he would not refuse him out of respect for his nephew. Don't think that when you see a rank 3 mutant you can immediately get help. Van said that rank 3 is valuable, but you don't need to idolize them. Mr. Wang's son suggested that they just watch. He believed that Mr. Yaning would not disappoint them. A green mixture began to emerge from the zombies' guts, which immediately affected the soldiers when it came into contact with their skin. One of the soldiers called to inform Commander Xiao that a mutated level 2 monster rotting pit had appeared on the left side. Within a second, the commander himself arrived and immediately called everyone to attack. Using his blade, he cut one of the monsters into 2 pieces. A crack began to appear on the ground, which became larger with each passing moment, and noise was also heard. Most likely it was a level 3 mutant. Things were bad because for 2 level 3 mutants, you need at least 6 awakened level 3 initial rank. The crack grew wider, and Xiao ordered a retreat and returned to a safe area. 2 mutants jumped out of the ground. One looked like a tick, and the other like a worm. Then Xiao ordered to set fire to the ditch and hold the position until the last breath Yaning became visible in the sky. He activated his sword storm skill. The attack immediately pierced the tick's head. Commander Xiao was horrified. This guy destroyed a level 3 mutant with 1 blow. Landing on the ground, Yaning greeted the commander with a wicked grin. Turning his back to him, the boy said that when he dealt with the mutant worm, then the 2 of them would have a heart-to-heart talk. Holding the fire sword in his hand, he activated the next skill, Heaven's Light. And with 1 blow, the worm was torn into 3 large pieces. In just a month, Yaning managed to reach level 3 and surpass the commander himself. Xiao stood there with his mouth open and couldn't understand how this was possible. With a smile on his face, Yaning said that the soldiers could easily handle the rest of the zombies themselves, and putting his hand on the commander's shoulder, he offered to go with him. Yaning had a very important matter for him. They watched carefully, and what they saw shocked them. Even Van himself saw this for the first time. Not every third-level fighter can do this. President Wang agreed. Such skills were indeed rare. Uncle Zhang guessed that the guy was not much weaker than Commander Chen Kai-lai. He was not surprised why Yaning was so arrogant. Yaning said that he was waiting for them all in the meeting room in Tianfeng. After some time, they arrived at the appointed place. Yun was surprised that Commander Xiao was also here and was already sitting at the table. Yaning decided not to introduce anyone to anyone because everyone knew each other and asked to sit down and start a conversation. Commander Xiao's fears were confirmed. Yaning was not just a talented individual, he was supported by powerful forces. Uncle Zhang immediately thanked the guy for the invitation, and the president praised him and his enormous talent. Commander Xiao noticed that these guys were mispronouncing Yaning's name. As if sensing this, the guy immediately decided to clarify that his name was Yaning, not Yeling. Xiao was puzzled. It turns out that these guys didn't even know his real name. which means they weren't secretly supporting him. Yening reported that his strength was currently at the middle stage of the 3rd level and asked the commander to find a strength measuring device. He stood up and said that they had already measured the guy's strength. Wang and Zhang began to flatter him, saying that they had never doubted his strength for a moment and had always known that he was a level 3 master. But Yening carefully insisted that the commander bring this meter. President Wang asked that perhaps Yening didn't just call them here to show that he was level 3. But he only grinned and closed his eyes and did not answer this question. After a while, Xiao brought out a force measuring device and handed it to Yening. The elders started to mock a little, saying that pride is good, but showing it in front of them is a waste of time. Activating his power, the boy touched the meter, and he reported that Yening was a peak level 2 master. Everyone standing there was shocked. In fact, until the very end, they were sure that the guy was bluffing. With no idea how this was even possible, they all rushed to the power meter. After looking at the device's screen, they once again confirmed that it had a 2nd level peak. The president asked how the 2nd level could possibly demonstrate the power of the 3rd middle stage. It was incredible. All this made the commander's head spin. His strength corresponded to level 3. When he was 2nd, Zhang Yun finally decided to be the first to ask how this was possible. Yening said that they found it hard to believe that he was a level 3. He used to be an SS-class talent, but because of his willpower, he was excluded from the project. President Wang was even more shocked. The guy was able to rise to the 2nd level at the peak stage in half a month. Commander Xiao said that if that was the case, then all these so-called seeds could go to hell. Yening replied that he had gathered them all to show their potential and find allies, and he also wanted to return to the Seed Project and take apart one by one the so-called geniuses of the Seed Project and force everyone to find out who is worthy of state investment. President Wang got straight to the point, asking what exactly Yening wanted from them and how he would explain the nature of his suddenly increased strength. He decided not to talk about the system. He only said that he could transform willpower into attack power and something else, but he would not reveal it yet. Now everything fell into place. The commander knew that there was some other mysterious force behind him. Yening suggested uniting into an alliance where he would be the leader and they would support him in every possible way. And when he regains 1st place, he thanked him very well. And after these words, he decided to leave the guys for a while so that they could discuss everything. While they were pondering the boy's proposal, their son suggested agreeing Wang's family could become big traders. Thanks to this, Wang asked Zhang what kind of power could be behind Yening. He replied that he had no access to fruit, so it was definitely not the military. And he had rich experience, which means that he is an independent character. After these words, Wang agreed with Zhang's opinion. Despite his potential, if they side with him, they will be enemies of their high-ranking officials. Wang agreed. His potential was indeed huge, but this deal was too risky. Now the commander spoke. He decided to take a risk because of the big profit and because he was stuck at the initial stage of the 3rd level. Here Wang Jr. joined in because the bigger the storm, the bigger the catch, and will his father be able to come to terms with the fact that all his life he was just a deputy? Yun turned to his uncle. Since he came instead of his father and grandfather, it was up to him to make the decision, but he had to understand how exactly they would act. Yening was glad that he finally had his own power, the entire southern and northern China, and the Chamber of Commerce. He decided that he would go to the capital, because it would become the arena of his future actions aimed at radical changes. In the capital's Seed Project, there was complete chaos in the conference room after reading the report. How could they possibly miss a genius with 3rd-level power? If something goes wrong this time, no one will escape responsibility. One of the mustachioed commanders suggested that the general report this immediately in order to correct the situation. Another commander agreed with these words. Yening needs to send a detachment to escort him to the capital safely. Yan Glio, who initiated the Seed Project, proposed to give Yening a special priority title. The staff officer Seed suggested holding back the information and not reporting it to senior management. Last time, it was the officer who refused Yening, and this time he dared to say the same thing. Looking angrily at Jen, Yang asked if he was by any chance tired of living. He began to assure General Yan that he didn't mean it that way, but that it would be better to postpone it even for a week. General Meng's youngest son, Zhang Yang, is currently first in line, but he has not yet reached the peak of level 2. After these words, there was silence in the hall. Everyone was thinking about how to act correctly in this situation. Yening has the potential to rise to level 3, and when he does, Zhang Yang should give up the title. General Yang gave a 3-day grace period. If Zhang Yang did not rise to level 3 during this time, then he should not blame them for making this decision. He also prepared everything for Yening's arrival and advised the officer not to harm him because even the people behind him would not get off easy. Zhang Meng's son stood in the Crystal Valley and blew his pipe. Stopping, he asked his father if he was joking. He had just reached the peak of the 2nd level, and now he needed to reach the 3rd, and in just 3 days, he said while smoking that with Kai Lai's support, Yening had reached the peak of the 2nd level, and he also had the strength of the 3rd level. He was a little surprised when he realized that Yening wanted to get his title of first in line. Although there is nothing to fear from this Kai Lai behind him, but if Ning rises to level 3 first, Yan's title will definitely be lost. Before the 3rd level test, the father decided to send his son to a high-difficulty dungeon. They still had a chance to keep the title. Zhang Yang wanted to do everything to buy more time for his son. He said that Ye was just a newbie, and the path to the capital was not so easy. Looking at these fruits, Yening said that having a faction is a completely different matter, and Kai Lai also gave him an A-class skill. The boy first decided to raise all his characteristics to the maximum and started eating fruits. After pumping them all, he felt completely different, as if the spiritual power inside him was flowing faster. As expected from a Class A sword skill, it had the ability to attack and defend at the same time. It was strong even without enhancement. And throwing the book up the mountain, he said, "Sword skill learned improvement." And after these words, this skill was successfully improved. Falling Skies, it was SSS class. Its capture range was 1 kilometer. Yening was very surprised by this and decided that he would have to test it in the 3rd level test. His sword skill slot has been filled, and also after reaching level 3, he will be able to use some skills on his own. And then a system window popped up in front of him, offering him to complete a mission.